Okay, another weird stream idea from Vincent Martin here with my talk with Gasmask about Never Knows Best versus Kurtosis versus uh Pat. He made an argument that yeah, the community tab had some sort of hints that yeah, maybe he was depressed and blah blah blah. Why I think psychoanalyzing people via their community post and limited Twitter presence and just with all this crap, let me at least entertain it just to have a full account, test my own theories and present it as much as I can, give my own thoughts, yada yada. With that said, let's go through the community post and then through the video that will give us true insight into Never Knows Best mind. Not really. Again, stupid to speculate or psychoanalyze people based on what they post on social media when it's as limited as what Never Knows Best does. But I'll entertain the fact. So there's claims that can be supported, like maybe I'll just go over it. There's a whole bunch here, not even very many. There's no particular tone to it, just very matter of fact. Final update, deleted second channel. YouTube has deleted second channel. New video, basic stuff. Yeah, monetizations, the porn game. Well, I knew making a video about a porn game was a little risky, but I didn't expect this. So, all this fun stuff. Milestones, first one 3 years ago. Now let's get into this fun stuff here.
By the time this is up, it looks like I will be just reaching 200,000 subscribers, which makes the timing a little ironic, because the main reason I am making this is to tell you that I've been thinking about quitting. Which doesn't mean I am quitting, not exactly, but I have been thinking about it.
See his sort of phrase and his interest in right from the jump. He wants to let people know that he's thinking about quitting. Will he quit? Will he not? Find out next episode. No, just gonna play this.
I should say, I don't necessarily want to quit, but I do want to do what's best for me, and I have been spending a lot of time recently trying to work out what that is. So, I want to share my thought process about this, so at the very least, you can understand where I'm coming from and why I'm doing what I'm doing. If you are here from Patreon, this is going to be a bit like the monthly updates, just longer and even more negative than usual. Anyway, because of the length, I'll try to include.
So, normally he's more negative in his Patreon post. I mean, I joined at the $0 tier. I mean, my commitment to actually psychoanalyze and Never Knows Best isn't so much that I'm willing to put a monetary goal to it. This is just a short bump in it, and I'm not even sure if I like his content. It's interesting. That one video, the two videos, the videos I've seen are interesting. Are they good? Are they worth supporting financially? In my opinion, no, but that's me.
Some timestamps for different topics, so you can skip around if you really want, although everything I have to say is in many ways connected. This is also mostly scripted, so I'm hoping I'll be able to explain myself somewhat coherently, but we'll see. First, though, let me.
So, if I was to get into the Freudian state of mind, stroking my beard, I would say he's rather confused at this point in his channel thing. And this is after the sex video 1 year ago. More like a year and a half, maybe at this point. 2022. Who knows? You never knows best. So, very interesting. God. Some of this is going to come off as satire. That's because the whole entire premise is a little bit ridiculous, is why I'm not sticking to the psychoanalyzing, but you will get a bit of it here and there.
provide some context. Let's talk about the channel's history. I started making videos about 4.5 years ago on a whim. I had no real expectations going into this. I had never done anything like this before, and I didn't know what it would be like. And actually, that was one of the main reasons I did it. I wanted to know what making a YouTube video was like, so I took it upon myself to find out. And spoilers, it was fun. More fun than I expected, really. I mean, I kind of thought
Fun,
I'd
fun,
attempt to
fun
make
in
a
the
YouTube
sun,
video,
sun,
and in
sun.
doing so, I'd find out that making videos is hard, and that would be the end. But that wasn't what I found out. I found out that I liked it. So I kept at it. It took me 8 videos until I had my first taste of success, which came from the Pathfinder Kingmaker review, and about 1 year until the channel started to find a consistent level of success, which came shortly after the Fallout video. From this point, things were simple. After all, making videos was fun, so all I had to do was make more. There were also plenty of things I wanted to make videos about, and every video helped the channel grow. 1 year after the Fallout video, which is about 2 years since the channel's inception, I made a video on Dragon Age, and it was my most successful video of all time, by far. It reached 500,000 views in a month, and the entire channel saw significant growth, far greater than ever before, and so I thought, aha, I have made it. I have reached the level of success I am happy with, and everything will be easy from here. Then the Dragon Age video got incorrectly flagged for hate speech, and channel growth nosedived, which is a very YouTube-like experience, really. Anyway, things became a little more complicated a few months later when I made the CRPG guide video. This was my biggest video up until this point in terms of work, and I was happy with how it turned out. I did have to play or
And all that commentary was freaking muted because I'm a dumbass who was checking out something about the leveling. Smart, Vincent. I'm very, very smart. But basically, I was saying about transformation, blah, blah, blah. Maybe cut this down to get a little bit of gist later because bound to make mistakes. Still a little bit sick. So sick going in with a sort of sick idea about psychoanalyzing deep dive on Never Knows Best video. What I can get from it, what I can't, blah, blah, blah.
replay mostly a lot of CRPGs for that video, however, and then when Wasteland 3 released, right around the time I was finishing the video, I realized something, which was that I didn't really want to play Wasteland 3 because for the past 2 years, I had spent hundreds and hundreds of hours mostly replaying CRPG after CRPG.
See, in Fallout, he's getting a little bit tired, a little bit drag. This is probably a through line if he scripted this out and has it with any particular structure. So, and Wastelands 3 was just good, not great, not anything special, not anything horrible, blah, blah, blah.
High enough quality that it would be worth my viewers' precious time. I tried.
Precious time.
And this is in large part where I found the enjoyment to actually come from when making a video. It's in that attempt at greatness. It's in the unpredictability and the struggle and the desire to produce something you can be proud of while knowing that doing so isn't easy. And it's in the rare feeling you get when you reach the end after hours and hours of work, day after day, and you think, yeah, this is it. This video is good.
Okay, he's taken solace in some of the sort of processy. He's taken pretty much, he respects the process. Yeah, he does bring up here and there that, yeah, it's a business. He has to meet certain metrics and for business, career goals, things. But let me not cut him off at the pass.
For doing all this. Basically, I can't make videos without it, or at least I don't want to, because it changes the process from something I fundamentally enjoy into a slog where I am working too many hours and I feel miserable most of the time. So good enough may technically be good enough for the channel to survive, maybe even to grow, but it is not good enough for me. And a similar set of statements could be made for making videos on
He has high standards and he can get discouraged. He has a whole little story, which we might get to, or I might skip over about when he was in uni. You know, those darn Brits with their uni instead of colleges or university over here about, the sort of procrastination and all that fun stuff and how this at one point, probably after the demonetization of and the ban of his history of sex video games, that was sort of something that started happening to him.
subjects that I don't have a genuine passion for, or videos that feel formulaic and repetitive, or even videos that I feel certain are doomed to fail. Because how can I enjoy spending so much time and energy working as hard as I can on something that I know will be a failure when I could be spending that same time and energy on something that people would enjoy and could benefit me rather than hindering me? Anyway, we'll come back to video creation. For now, though, let's return to the channel history. So, I did not make a video on Wasteland 3, and life went on.
Yep, boring stuff. Jump ahead. Okay, talk about the sort of what he wants. So he needs that sort of tension. He's the main takeaway from that section, but he still wants to sort of hit all the YouTube algorithm being pushed, getting more subscribers, yada, yada, yada. So that's the gist of that.
The algorithm will smile upon you, and your channel will be given another chance at genuine growth, just like what happened to my channel before with the Fallout video and the Dragon Age video and the Genshin Impact video. And when that happens, maybe don't make a video about porn games. Maybe never make a video about porn games. Maybe don't even say the word porn out loud on YouTube, because
There's a bit of humor there. And let me skip ahead from this very sexually suggestive material to not get this demonetized. Am I still up and running? Yeah, let's hope so. Okay, but go ahead.
videos to make anymore. Now, if that sounds like a simple problem, then allow me to complicate it for you. There are 3 different requirements I have when it comes to making a video. These are: 1, that I am passionate about the video topic, which is an obvious one, passion is fuel. 2, that the topic is algorithmically viable, i.e., that there will be enough people interested in the topic to click on the video to provide a good enough click-through rate for the video to succeed. And 3, that the video can be completed in a realistic time frame. Time is money.
Time is money, all practical realities. Passion for a topic means he can, it's sort of funny given his sort of monotone nature, but that's besides the point. All these are good sort of metrics. I don't follow any of them because I don't really give much of a crap about any of this.
A list, which ended up becoming multiple different lists, but ideas I have. The problem is that these ideas don't meet all 3 of these criteria. For example, I might be able to think of an idea that would do well with the algorithm and wouldn't take too long, but that I have no real passion for. And this is no good because if I don't have passion, I won't enjoy the work, causing other problems. Or I might have an idea that I am passionate.
So enjoyment is a particular matter of him, importance, viability. So it makes you question some of his recent ones. He definitely has had a shift with his content if you look at it, which I'll take a look after this whole video before I possibly jump in his second channel video about politics, the dreaded politics. I think there's a connection between politics and all this other stuff online, but that's just an opinion of mine. That's the history
of
of gaming.
MMOs video, which took far longer than normal as it's such a time-intensive project.
Yep.
This
History
type
of
of
gaming
video
as a
is
whole
fine
probably
in
took forever.
moderation, but each video doesn't seem good enough anymore. One of the challenges of YouTube is that you don't just make something you want to make. You do so continuously. You make videos.
Yeah, if you want to be successful. Okay. He is being practical here. Some people don't care about success. Okay. But obviously, he has a certain success marker he wants to meet. So we're not really we got a little bit of that depression, got a little bit cuckoo crazy after this, cuckoo for a thing. But is it really enough to meet the standards? I'm still not seeing the need for making that one video that is being characterized as just a hit piece under Geist. I think that's a schizo theory, but I have some of my own minor schizo theories, so fair enough there.
About a week of work. It was going to be a video about gaming dystopias. I've always liked dystopian fiction, 1984 is actually my favorite book of all time. It is the one and only book that I think every single person has an obligation to read.
Yeah, that's a horrible book to read or listen to on audiobook. Yes, the theme, you should struggle through it. It's definitely worth reading or watching the movie or getting the Cliff's notes on it, but it really is a slog to actually literally read.
Communicates the setting to the player through its mechanics and story. Anyway, the idea is okay, but okay isn't enough. And ultimately, I don't think the video would do well because most people aren't as interested in dystopian settings as me, and the video doesn't have an obvious audience. And it's not like
Yep, audience is important for people. I have no particular set audience while I'm doing a live stream by myself, okay? I don't think anyone has this particular interest in going into this deep dive. I'll never knows best, so I didn't even try to promote this. But it's still something worth recording and thinking about.
the idea wasn't good enough. But that's the thing, none of them are anymore. Every
Nope.
idea has its problems, and the channel is already
Yep.
doing worse than ever. And choosing between bad ideas feels bad, and forcing ideas feels risky. And did I mention I don't feel very happy, which I don't think is helping things. And I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing, but whatever thing I do feels like it is the wrong
Yeah, this sort of lends a little bit of credence to Pat's sort of schizo theory. But just because you base your schizo theories on something's true, sort of like the Mama Max thing and him referring to his one video as a ARG, the through line actually is important to connect.
thing. And now that I am confessing how I feel, it's probably worth bringing up that I'm not even sure if I like this type of content anymore. I mean,
Bingo, bingo. This is the bell that I want to go for. Change here. This is a change in Never Knows Best content. And yes, definitely looking at his previous videos. But here, you can definitely make the claim he's not happy, depressed, mentally ill. I think that is a radical push from this. Maybe the change in content that he's done recently is a result of being unhappy and him making the content, doing the content he thinks will make him being happy. Again, this is armchair psychology based on videos and limited social media is a fool's errand, but it's best just to be a completionist with all this stuff since I like to dwell on certain topics for longer than any given audience tends to be interested in keeping up with it. But that's a choice of mine. I can regret or not. We'll see how it turns out.
don't get me wrong, I like my videos, but of course I like my videos. I'm somewhat biased in their favor, but I struggle to like other people's videos of a similar style. I mean, generally, I don't watch videos like mine in my free time, and when I do, I tend to find them boring or worse.
Yeah, it's a rather saturated market, what he's gotten himself into. I could
Problem, because the best guiding light in what content to make is what content you enjoy. And this is important even outside of a lack of ideas induced crisis, because when you make something, you're basically faced with a never ending set of decisions about what to say, what to leave out, how to structure things, what style to use, and so on. And so the
Yep. So a very big consideration, and unless this is I just don't understand. This sort of would fly in the face. He's definitely very conscious of that. His previous content sort of proves it. So about the a meal video, you can only assume he purposely structured it that way, or you can take Pat's schizo theory. He just created a really weirdly structured hit piece. I like my theory better that he intentionally structured it that way, not to be an ARG. I mean, it fits in well with that Mama Max schizo theory that he's sort of pulling from. But again, there's really nothing solid to say either way how these sort of things go.
only way to navigate these decisions is to have a vision, and the only vision I have is what I enjoy. Basically, make content for yourself, make decisions based on what you like or what you think is good, and so on. But that doesn't work so well when I'm struggling to honestly say that I like any of this content anymore, and I increasingly find that none of it seems that good. I didn't used to
Okay.
feel this way. I grew up around gaming media. I had a subscription to PlayStation Magazine back in the PS1 days, and when the internet strolled into people's lives, I was an early user of the legendary gaming news site IGN, including the forums.
Boo! Get him off the stage, guys. IGN. Wow. What it used to be and what it is now. He's talking about the short little reviews and how the sort of long form critiques on YouTube serve different purposes. It has a different audience. A keyword keeps on coming up. A very blatant understand of audience, not looking at these particular videos with this particular type of content creator. I don't have a focus for audience personally, but I don't plan on really going anywhere with my career. Well, YouTube career. Okay. I like my real life. This is just a hobby, having fun with it. But for people who consider it as a career, different story completely.
Like Matthew Matosis's Dark Souls 2 or Bioshock Infinite review, I love them. They were videos that challenged conventional mainstream opinion. They were detailed, they were argumentative, they backed their arguments up with evidence, they talked about aspects of a game normal reviews would never touch, and they felt like a more in-depth and engaging way to talk about games that went above and beyond what traditional reviews had been doing since.
It's an interesting list that he goes with here. I can really find it interesting. You can almost make an overlap with Mahler, the reaction to Matthew Matosa. H Bomber guy sort of included his in that. Are we going to get any commentary about H Bomber guy, or was that not his focus back then? I just don't know how he got from this to there, what he's doing now. That is the bridge that I'm trying to grasp here. And I pre-watched this. I'm going to probably have to play this out. Not too long.
My knowledge of gaming media had begun. But it's not 2014 anymore, and this type of video no longer seems like a new revolutionary take on gaming criticism. Instead, to me, it feels like an established
Correct.
breed of content that has grown formulaic and bloated, where people just pump out videos on whatever game they think might be popular enough to get views, while often staying as close to mainstream audience opinion as possible so as to avoid angering their subscribers.
Yep, that is a general assessment that I will agree with. There has been a certain wave of certain long men who has taken different approaches to it and actually gone against these video game essayists. Sounds like Never Knows Best doesn't even really care for these video game essayists peers in his field. He doesn't like that type of content. He makes videos he thinks he likes. That's his important metric.
Even worse, however, is that most videos just don't feel that original to me anymore. I've been around people's opinions on games for a long time, maybe too long, and sometimes I feel like I've heard everything already. And while obviously this isn't literally true, there are still things I have heard many more times than I need to. For example, in 2008, Vault Dweller's very negative review of Fallout 3 felt like a breath of fresh air.
Bingo, 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 bongo. He doesn't really get into the details here, but this sort of ties into my own content when I went to sort of analyze, critique, commentate, react to 3 Fallout 3 critics on YouTube. I had a particular sort of group that I wanted to go with, and that turned a little sideways for myself. I am finding the sort of overlap, even though I only knew Never Knows Best video after I was searching for the history of gaming for a particular stream of mine. Find the serendipitous nature of things quite interesting. I might have not even realized that he made this so-called hit piece on Cree and Pat and Osmond Cold. Probably would have heard about it, but not as quickly as I would have if I didn't find that video and have the habit of subscribing to channels, even if overall I don't like it. Just content surfing, so to speak. And if something pops up, is good.
But 14 years have passed since then, and I have now heard or seen the same criticisms of Bethesda's take on the Fallout setting repeated again and again and again, to the point where it doesn't feel like people are thinking for themselves. It just feels like people are repeating a narrative that has been passed down to them, to an audience that probably wasn't even around on the internet when that original review was written.
Bingo bongo. The theory that sort of comes into play with his particular video on Starfield, more particularly a meal. They can, from this particular thing, which was well over a year ago, he definitely had this idea in his head, same idea that I sort of picked up on for whatever reason. But yeah, there is the sort of seed of this idea. And it took over a year before he found a particular matter that sort of aligned with this particular thought process of him. At least is how I am seeing this in retrospect.
And if I'm really being honest, I don't even think people have gotten better at delivering this narrative. I liked the original. It was unashamedly scathing, with the soul and authenticity of something written with no regards to keeping subscribers happy, and I can respect that.
Yeah. Why, on the other hand, someone like Kurtosis seems to have catered his particular thing towards a particular audience that has been growing, probably for good reason with Bethesda, how they've been growing and how they've been ignoring the criticism. Had 76 was a tragedy. There was definitely a lot of valid criticism against all their games, even 4, even 3. There's some criticism I definitely do agree with in that game, despite the narrative about Bethesda fanboys. Uh, you gotta love when the narrative. Okay, I really don't do things out of passion. I do things out of interest. If something is interested in the discourse that I think is worth me following up on and investigating and sort of commentating on, I'll go look into it, just like this particular matter. And sometimes when you're the only one looking at it, you got to cover all possible bases. And definitely, given some of Pat's theories and his response, this is definitely one of the bases it's good to cover.
So, what I'm saying with all this is that I don't think I really like this genre of content that I have found myself in, and it's nothing personal. I don't dislike your favorite gaming YouTubers. I think I'm honestly just bored of it all.
Are you sure? Are you sure? You don't dislike Kurtosis or Patrician TV? Who knows? Who knows? Definitely Kurtosis, I can understand. Patrician, as you said, he had no problems until the recent Starfield video. Same consensus as me, but maybe I didn't look at his previous videos critically enough. Or maybe this is just a change of Pat's content style. Who knows? Doing that deep of a dive isn't that big of a concern to me.
And when I'm struggling with ideas, or struggling to make decisions, or struggling to improve, that's a problem because I feel like I have nowhere to look to for guidance, nowhere to find inspiration, and no clear indication of what to do. I don't want to just pump out content. I don't want to iterate on familiar narratives.
I 100% agree with this sentiment, but I don't want a place to look to. Yes, it's easy to have a framework, to go with the flow, to jump on a bandwagon. But when you notice something that no one else noticed, as I said, I joke about him stealing my script idea with his meal video because I was thinking of something along similar veins that would have actually been more of a trifecta factor of Starfield generally and the anti Bethesda, the anti woke, the anti Xbox people, along with the defense squad of all 3 of those sort of camps, plays into the factor. It would have been a rather complex thing that would have probably took me a month or 2 to actually hash out. And he had to jump the gun and make me think about this quicker and jump on it quicker. And it's probably going to all blow over, hopefully, with not much problem.
I don't want to just do the obvious thing. Good enough isn't good enough for me. I'm an addict and I need to chase my high, but I don't know how to do that in a way which will make the channel grow, and growth, money, and success do matter.
Yeah, this is where we differ. I'm fine with just doing whatever pops up my interest, whatever content I want, and try to make it viable to a general audience and try to attract an audience with the type of content I create. But it's really hard to create your own niche. Mahler did that, which you can somewhat respect, but you know how I've been a little bit critical of Mahler and his EFAP as of late. But that's besides the point.
I mean, people might try to say they don't, but they do, for many reasons. And hell, I assume these things matter to me less than to most, because I am a socially reclusive hermit who hates materialism, but even for me, they matter. And I have worked on this.
See, this is where the divide between me and him. I just don't care. I try to have fun. I like being intellectually satisfying, and pursuing these things is more. I don't care about materialism. I don't or dislike it. There's things I need. There's things I don't. It's just interesting, the sort of overlap,
This channel for 4.5 years. And
the similarities and the differences. But I could sort of agree with this, but not really here.
I don't want to just give up. I don't want to throw away what I've created. I don't want to fail to take advantage of what is honestly a great opportunity that I am lucky to have. I
Yep,
want
it
to
would
succeed.
be a
It's
waste.
just hard. If you want to know what the real
Life
problem
is
is
hard,
with working on
and
something
you
for a
die.
long time, it's not what you put into it. It's everything else you give up in doing so. This is called opportunity cost, and if you ignore it, you do so at your peril.
Correct.
So I have a big incentive to make this.
I have no opportunity cost. I have not. I do this as a hobby for fun, so I do this in my spare time. I don't give up the time that I work in life, spend with friends and family. The other things I do on the internet for what I do on this channel. It's just a side thing to keep me busy and intellectually challenge me. Maybe it'll factor into a better career in the future, but I'm doubting that's YouTube with how I've been trekking my way through.
This channel work. But that doesn't change the fact that I am stuck, and every move seems like the wrong one. And I haven't given up, but things are still going wrong anyway. The last video was cancelled. The one
Yep, life is tough.
before that might be the worst performing of all time. The last year has seen all real growth stop. The Patreon has also flatlined. Monthly subscribers are getting lower and lower. Even community posts get less and less engagement. And all of this is only going to get worse because I am lost. And work is harder than it used
And the market's getting more saturated. More people are coming in, nipping at the heels. Culture wars taking play. Good, honest criticism, which I definitely agree. Never knows best aims for. He has his biases. He has his particular perspective that definitely skews him in particular directions from my limited knowledge of him, which isn't all that deep, but still, that's generally how most people work. That even works with me. I'll admit it. Anyone who says they have no personal biases is probably freaking lying.
to be. And I don't have any good ideas to turn things around. And I'm not even sure if I'll ever have good ideas anymore because I'm not even sure I still think this type of content
Good ideas are overrated, in my opinion. Just go with your gut. Make the sort of content that you feel you need to make, what satisfies you. But maybe I'm just a bit of a selfish person who's given I have no sort of material attachment to YouTube content.
is good. So, are you starting to understand the problem? If anyone else looked at my channel and declared it dead, their judgment would be severely premature. But
Correct.
I am not anyone else. I am me. And when it comes to this channel, I know things others don't. I know what
Probably.
goes on
I would
behind
hope
the
so.
scenes. I know what a video takes. I know the person who makes them. And I know this is a bad situation.
That's a very weird way of framing it, I must say. I know the person who makes it. Yeah, you. Unless you're just a voice script actor. Makes me question it a bit. Not really, as I said. Psychoanalysis are rather stupid, but
It is a situation I
play
always knew
along
was
with it.
possible and always hoped to avoid. My original goal after this channel started to go somewhere following the Fallout video was always to get to the point where I had
Blah, blah, blah. He goes over his little milestones. Beautiful stuff. Success. And some people would call me jealous, but no, there's a certain amount of energy that you need to keep up for this sort of content that I don't think I can invest into it.
working. I don't like cross promotion. I don't like revealing personal information about myself, even
Okay, here.
private messages. I don't for stuff. Make the videos, and I do. In the end, it was not to be. In retrospect, it's probably fair to say that I am not actually a very good YouTuber. I mean, I do make the videos and I do work hard, but there is a lot to YouTube. And the thing is that while I do
Correct.
enjoy making the videos, I don't think I actually enjoy all the other stuff. I don't like looking at analytics. I don't enjoy reading comments. I don't like responding to emails and private messages. I don't like organizing sponsorships. I don't like promoting myself on social media. I don't like using social media. I don't like networking. I don't like cross promotion. I don't like revealing personal information about myself, even. I like being distant and unknown and just focusing on.
This is why a psychoanalyzation of him would be really tough, really dry, basic stuff. This is about the best you can pull from him personally that I found, and pull in from anything else, and even just pull in from this one instance in time is completely ludicrous. You can try to sort of use this as a stepping stone to sort of see how his content has pivoted since this moment, how he's maybe you can maybe theorize about his thought processes, which I'll get into after this. But let's finish this up.
On making videos. I don't even think I want to be liked. I've never really wanted to be liked. I just want people to like my videos.
This is quite an interesting trait. I can't say I totally disagree. I don't even care if people like my videos, my content, or me personally. I think it's more about interesting. Okay, I'm very willing to play the villain or the heel or the clown or whatever role I can if it makes things entertaining. Try to keep entertaining up. Don't focus on probably the biggest topics, but I try to do what I can with making it entertaining. Do I succeed or fail? Humor is subjective, entertainment is subjective, all that fun stuff.
This approach may have been a mistake, however. A lot of what drives success on YouTube is an audience liking a YouTuber. YouTube is
Correct. Pat Muller and a lot of these other people, even Kurtosis, his audience likes him. I don't really have audience, and I'm wondering what they think about me. Probably not too highly. I'm probably just a blip. Subscribe, occasionally watch. Who knows?
a very parasocial platform. People subscribe to the YouTubers they like more so than to the people they think make good content. And the big advantage YouTube has over other more traditional media is that it feels much more personal. This is just how YouTube works, and YouTubers will often go to great lengths to try to be more likable to their audience.
Yep. Audience capture. And about the thing about the opposite of audience capture, that rags, and I argued with Gasmask over on that stream. It's quite interesting. I don't think he's really in his head. He has a very practical viewing of how this is. Yes, he overcomplicates things, so definitely a factor, but he's definitely from this video seems to have a very realistic perspective of content creation. Has he gone wild, mentally unstable, as some people are speculating on? I don't think so. I think this is just a cold, rational reality, but I don't have much to work off of. And other people have even less, I'm thinking. But I can't say that I'm showing the proof with the stream, going above and beyond to show that I'm making the effort to see if Pat's claim is true, about possibly true. Yeah, possibly true. Very low percentage of that actually, any of those bullshit theories being true still, based on I'm not really team never. I might be a little bit biased against some of the people, but I'm biased for good reason against the people I am. At least I think so. But of course I would think so.
And maybe I have somewhat neglected all this sort of stuff. In my defense, I don't like people. But in people's defense, that doesn't provide much of a reason for why they should start liking me. And
This
I
is
accept this.
quite an interesting
But
thing to
maybe I
reveal.
should have used
Maybe why
Twitter
this is
more.
unlisted.
Or maybe I should have created a Discord. Or maybe I should have avoided talking about porn games. Or maybe I made other mistakes. Maybe the videos weren't good enough. I don't
This is definitely this. Remember, this is a scripted video. He's thinking about the sort of, even in this, I can at least tell he's sort of going for little jokes here and there, but those sort of little jokes sort of have some insight underneath. How much? I don't fucking know. As I said, psychoanalyzing people is stupid.
actually know. It's hard to say. That's one of the things about YouTube that makes it difficult. You have no boss or quarterly statistics to tell you how you're doing. Instead, you spend all of your time dealing with unknowns, where you can
This is why this as a career is very volatile, and I'm sure a lot of people who take it very seriously do get burnt out.
like in a year or anything. It's all guesswork all of the time. And all of those unknowns are difficult to deal with. They have a cost. I think that's
Yeah, and it's easier to just set your own narrative and go with the flow, make the right friends in the right places for even when you slip up in your climb to the top, you have a net, a social safety net to cushion your blow, to console you like as versus heels versus babyface. Someone had me go through a little showing of him where they talk about he made it on a top 10 Watch Mojo list about a streamer meltdown. That was funny. You could see him fuming after he brought it up. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Clippable, clippable. Maybe if I turn this into a video, I'll throw that in here. Who knows?
why YouTubers burn out. I think that's why people stop uploading more than once a year. I think that's why YouTubers make videos about how everything's going badly and about being unhappy. I think people blame it on other stuff, but I think people are wrong. It's the unknowns that are the real problem, and everything else is just secondary. Or maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm projecting, maybe it's just me. Regardless, I have spent much time thinking about this, and I do have a solution.
Too much time, probably, but it's interesting how he's laying it out here. Not optically smart. Again, this is an unlisted video found in his sort of community section.
It is not a good solution, but it is the best that I have. So I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about this and what my plans are for the future.
Okay, plans for the future. Let's see how he's thinking he's going to do it and sort of compare it to what sort of videos he put out. See if it matches his sort of plan in here.
Basically, I want to have 2 channels. And on one channel, I will try to satisfy the algorithm and be successful. And on the other channel, I won't. I will try to satisfy myself, do what I want, and let success go.
Okay. Very basic plan. Very good basic plan. I really don't know how his mainline channel really meets those needs. Maybe it's a sort of compromise. Maybe there's some sort of trap in there. Who knows? Okay, keep this in mind. First part is the only
And
part.
then,
Let's see.
if I don't have a good idea for one channel, I will work on something for the other. So this way, I will have at least one creative outlet that doesn't revolve around the algorithm's needs, and I don't need to always produce one successful video after another, and I will have the freedom to wait for good ideas rather than trying to force them, and I can be more experimental and try out different things, and maybe even grow as a creator, all without feeling like I'm sacrificing any chance of monetary success. And as it so happens, I already have a second channel, and I've even tested the waters a little bit, and I even had a good time doing so. So I guess the real problem becomes which channel should be which? And the answer isn't as obvious as you might think. In fact, it's not obvious at all. New channels can have a lot more potential for growth, and the main channel is currently stagnating. But at the same time, the main channel has already received significant investment, and the second channel naturally provides greater freedom. And honestly, there is a lot that
Duality
can
of
be taken
man.
into consideration, and I'm not sure I need to outline every point, because ultimately it's my judgment which matters, and my judgment is that it's not possible to tell yet. As in,
Yep.
I don't think I have enough information to decide how viable the second channel is or could be, so I'd rather
Hmm.
make more videos while trying to keep the possibility
Okay, so there's a hint here. He's in a experimental theory. Has that experimental theory come and pass? Or if he's still in it, that's something really is yet to be determined.
of future success at least open, and then deciding in the future what to do when I have more information. So that is what I will do. I do want to make one more video on the main channel, one that I've already started, a retrospective on the Gothic series, as this is something that I once promised the patrons, and I would feel bad about walking away without finishing it. But after this,
Okay, very good. Very good.
and focus on making videos on my second channel for a while to gain more information about this channel's viability, while enjoying the opportunity this provides to make some videos that are a little different.
Okay, we'll
And
be
then,
checking
when
out
the day
second
comes that
channel.
I have a really good idea for the main channel, I will come back to it. And
Hmm, interesting. Starfield. He has a video which I probably should go over. The exploration of a space in video games or something like that. But yeah, interesting that this little tidbit is in here. Definitely way before Pat's video, so this can't be really used, but it definitely is something in his sights. Even though it doesn't seem like he did a critique or anything with major focused on Starfield besides the meal video. Maybe he has that planned afterwards. Maybe that will be his sort of response.
And I'm sure that day will come, eventually. At the very least, the one type of gaming video that I still look forward to making is covering upcoming games that I'm interested in that are from series or developers that I'm already invested in. And there are at least some of these that are obvious choices for videos, such as Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3, and Final Fantasy 16. To be honest, I find talking about newly released games to be generally more interesting than covering older ones because I like how people are still making up their minds and how not every obvious point has already been said. So there are still gaming videos I look forward to making in the future, and maybe I will have other ideas too. It's just that I don't believe I can keep making videos back to back, one after the other anymore. As for the second channel,
Fair enough. Fair enough. Don't want to get that burnout. Take your time. Do what you want sometimes. Satisfy yourself. Satisfy the algorithm. Sounds like all practical knowledge to me. Shit. Sounds rather level headed, along with, you know, trying to get some sort of satisfaction sort of out of the work he does for a career, makes money off of.
I don't actually have a plan, which might be a problem because for a channel to consistently grow, it really needs to have a theme. As the way growth works on YouTube is that when you upload a video, it's shown to various people who watch your content, and YouTube then takes the percentage of people who click on this new video as a measurement of how interesting the video is. This
Okay, okay. Curious, I'm curious. This is putting thoughts in my head. The sort of Emil video. I'm definitely going to have to check his exploration in space game to sort of double check how much he talked about Starfield in that particular video. Is that where his criticism, his sort of talking about Starfield sort of pops up or not? Got another sort of route to take.
is the click-through rate you hear people talking about. If a video then achieves a good click-through rate with the first audience it shows, while finding they do poorly whenever they try to do something different. Because
He definitely does think about the stats, analytics for someone who doesn't like to think about all this.
normal viewers. Therefore, if you want a channel to grow, you should probably aim to make content that appeals to similar people. But
Yep.
I don't know how much I actually want to do that, and I don't have any kind of theme in mind. And introducing restrictions so early kind of defeats the purpose of the second channel. Anyway,
And I think you need to be flexible in the given market, given the sort of content shift that can happen. But yeah, I think you need to have a general idea where you're going. Yeah, saying this as someone who has no, I like to think theory craft with how you can, even though I don't actually practice it on my own channel, but it's besides the point.
ideas, and there are some similarities between them, like a focus on internet culture and social commentary, but I don't have a plan. I guess the first two videos give some indication of what type of content I will probably make, and maybe if I keep making videos, a real channel will just sort of work itself out. You never know. No harm in being optimistic.
Yep, doesn't hurt to have a positive attitude and a plan and play by ear, and not letting your enemies know your plans. Also, be a wild card, man. Be a wild card.
I also think that I enjoy talking about things which are important to me, and that the more I do that, the more I will basically be forced sooner or later into overtly political territory. And that's probably not a good thing for me, because I like to challenge opinions and be critical of things. That's what I like to do when talking about video games, and that's what I like to do when talking about other things. And while there is obviously a large market for political
Yeah, political. I'm curious. Going over his political video. Don't know if he's going to take a certain side here and there. Don't know. They want to put him in a certain camp. I really want to see where he sort of falls. I would put him on the left side of the spectrum, but trying to determine that is rather hard, especially with this type of content. Supposedly, I got it wrong with a different content creator I covered, but maybe that was because they were in reactionary to a Synthetic Man fan. Okay, sometimes you can misdiagnose these things based on a number of factors.
content on the internet, I don't think most people who consume political content want to have their opinions challenged. I think they want the exact opposite, actually.
Correct, but the same goes probably for people in the cultural space and the gaming space. That's everywhere from what I see. Very little people want their ideas challenged. Yeah, they want to give the appearance that they'll take new input in, they'll take criticism, but generally when it comes push comes to shove, the bigger you get, the harder you fall. So you have to brush off sort of any attacks or criticisms you get in some sort of copium crap sandwich.
So I don't really think there is much of an audience out there for me, for what I want to do, what I want to make. But I still want to make it anyway. So basically, I have no plan. I don't think
I can respect that. I have no audience in mind. Let's see where I go. Let's see where it never goes. He might shed some people. He might find the audience and sort of champion some of his ideas, political or political dish in nature. So this whole thing against Kurtosis and Pat could be a whole political attack, but there's really too little to speculate in this particular little bit here to abstract that from them.
there is an audience out there, and this doesn't seem like a good financial decision. But this is what I'm going to do because I want to. And what else is there to say?
Oh, so worried about finance. Well, just because he's saying it doesn't mean you should actually seriously take it. So let me actually go to the channel to sort of overlook. I think I abstracted as much as I could out of that. Okay, let's take a look at the videos. Of course, the one I covered. Interesting little piece, considered a hit piece by some people. Session with bad games. Interesting choice. Heard that had mixed reaction. So, yep. And there's Final Fantasy. Definitely something I would want to watch if I had time. 5 hours. This is the one I watched with some people on stream. Gothic's never heard of it. But yeah, this is the one he was planning. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 since that came out. Okay. Well, 6 if you count this one, which is he was sort of earmarking. I'm going to watch this one next week because I'm going to start up with my sort of Elden Ring arc. At some point, I did the Joseph Anderson sort of react to that, but that's besides the point. So we're going through this and history of games. This one was quite interesting. It wasn't for me. Let's quickly, nope. Let's do this. I think there's some overlap, even if he doesn't know it. The sort of overlap between politics and the sort of cultural space that he's sort of walking into. Kurtosis, big fan of the anti-SJW neurotic people.
Sounds cliche, but it is true. Still, there is one thing I feel more confident about with every passing day, which is that online politics is broken. Something has went wrong. Progress is not being made. Issues aren't being resolved. And whatever
I really can't actually put it up with
the
it being
problem is, it's
understandable.
getting worse, little by little, day by day.
Okay. This is where he's wrong. Online discourse is increasingly getting broken. If you want to say the politics is even more broken, I could get behind that. But all online discourse, especially with all tribal and team sports sort of things, is becoming extremely out of the park and sort of bleeding through. At least that's my general theory on this.
Day, and it seems like it will continue to do so in the future. And I find that a little worrying, because if we are going in the wrong direction, you have to wonder where exactly we'll end up and whether we'll realize we're making a mistake in time to do something about it. So today I want to try to confront this problem head on, not to try to solve it, but instead to shine a light on what exactly seems to be happening and how we got here in the first place.
Okay, go over the history. Smart. Haven't actually pre-watched this one. Age of
What is the
Uncertainty.
point in life? Why are we here? Where do we come from? What is right? What is wrong?
A little bit too from the
Would not
beginning.
last forever though, and in time a new challenger appeared that would question the foundations of the world as we knew it. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus published On the Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres, which claimed the planets orbited the sun as opposed to the universe revolving around the Earth. This was a great leap forward for astronomy, but not so much for humanity, as no longer did we find ourselves at the center of the universe. And
Okay,
this marked the
Galileo.
beginning of what is known as the Scientific Revolution, a period that saw the emergence of minds could find truth, and with truth they could achieve progress. Thus,
See, I like that list there. Not worth
Enlightenment was
going
a time
over.
of optimism, where even if the world wasn't quite as simple as it once was, answers were still out there, waiting to be found. And if we just placed our faith in reason, science, and empiricism, then one day those answers would be ours.
But that's not the whole equation, I think. And I think that's demonstrated. Human psychology is not always rationale. You got to work a lot of rationale as post hoc rationale in a lot of regards. That it's a general rule, which it's good to bring that up. But maybe I'm just preceding what he's going to
This
say.
was the birth of the modern era, and it is where much of our values and institutions that still exist to this day were first formed. But history did not stop here, as in time modernity gave way to post-modernity, and so once more the foundations of our understanding of the world came into question. Now, postmodernism can be a confusing term, in part because it can mean different things in different contexts. But if you want a simple way to understand it, then think of it not as what comes after modernity, but as a reaction or a response to modernity.
Correct. Okay. That's the sort of the critique of the Enlightenment age. Okay. A lot of Marxist ideas came out of this, and they sort of reintegrated it into some sort of weird Frankenstein piece, in my personal opinion. Everyone has their own perspective on it, and that's my particular one. I think putting that out there is important to do, but I doubt he will. Taking the neutral stand, never a bad thing, but sometimes it can bite you in the ass later down the line.
Still, there's really only one part of postmodernism that we need to focus on, and that is what it means for the concept of truth. Before that, though, let us set the stage. It's the 20th century, and life is changing at a more rapid pace than it ever.
Oh, asshole move. I really hate that. Okay. I understand the sort of script structure. You lay out that thing because, if you get to the end state too early in it, people will click off. Be like, oh, that's what truth is. Okay. Don't need to watch the rest. So it's definitely a sort of tactic to keep people engaged with your particular content. But god damn, it's annoying when they bring up those questions, those sort of leading questions like, what's the truth? But we'll get to that.
Ever has before in history. And at the same time, all the great narratives of modernism are being called into question one by one and being found wanting. The idea of war as a thing of glory died in the trenches and amidst the machine gun fire of World War I. The idea of technology as humanity's savior was destroyed by the development of the atomic bomb and a looming Cold War. Faith in capitalism was shook by a Great Depression no one was able to see coming. Faith in liberalism was shaken by the rise of fascism and its devastating effectiveness. Faith in socialism was challenged as communism at last became a reality and came alongside brutal totalitarianism, widespread famine, and genocide.
Okay, at least he's willing to admit that. Give him credit for that. Don't think he's a tanky, at least.
Empires of the old world also collapsed or dissolved, leaving behind not a legacy of glory and triumph, but instead one of dark colonial atrocities. And new political movements in America and Europe questioned how progress had been achieved and where it might still have a long way to go. This is where postmodernism came from. Once upon a time, life was simple, but those times were long gone, and now people were finally starting to realize that.
Yeah, too attached to cold, hard, imperial scientific facts will leave people wanting in the end. There's only so much you can do with rationale when rationale sometimes will leave some people behind in the dust. We'll have those casualties, those people who will be left behind because it's rational to leave them behind. And that's a whole, and there will be some people to sort of take advantage of those people left behind to sort of get ahead in life. But age of uncertainty indeed.
And this is what postmodernism is. It's that realization, the understanding that the world is more complicated than we once thought, and the feeling of uncertainty that comes with not being sure what to do about that.
Is he going to have a strong attachment to postmodernism, the subjective viewpoint? Why he said in his video, opinions are fine, okay. When you start talking about cold, rational thought, that's where he draws a line.
Emphasis on reason, objectivity, and universal truth came to be increasingly rejected in favor of understanding knowledge as conditional.
That's mainly because we have to, with rationale, you have to admit you don't know where that line. Can we reconstruct the brain? There's just a limit to what human knowledge can do. But I'm getting off on my own personal tangents. Okay, I'm just putting out the problems with the purely rational mindset, and he's sort of bringing up postmodernism as the reaction to that.
And constructed. The philosopher whose work most exemplified this was Michel Foucault, who argued that power and knowledge are always intertwined and sought to examine various ways power operates within society. Underneath Foucault's work, there seemed a desire to question the unquestioned and expose that which isn't usually seen, and Foucault went on to leave quite the legacy in his wake, becoming the most cited person in all of academia, across all fields and all of history. The impact of Foucault and other postmodern thinkers on academia was enormous, And within the social sciences and humanities, postmodern thought can be seen everywhere, as truth increasingly became something to be scrutinized and treated subjectively. Still, science
And that's particular a problem, but we'll get there.
was not exempt from the changing of the times either. At the birth of the Enlightenment, it was viewed as the primary means by which humanity would come to understand everything that needed to be understood. But with time, it turned out that science had a secret of its own, which is that despite how good it might be at providing answers, there is one thing it's even better at, and that is creating more questions. Yes, science did tell us more about the
Okay, beautiful. He gets into that. Yeah, you learn your limits that science teaches you, but then people will try to abstract that and say things like there's no afterlife, there's no God, purely rational perspective. Why that's completely rational perspective to have, we don't know. There's limits to our knowledge.
world, but the main thing it had to say was that the world is more complex than we realized. And so
Yeah.
rather than bringing humanity
And a lot of people don't realize that's what the science does. Like people say, client science, like climate change is a settled science. No, it's not. Most of the climate models are just the best people in that field sort of factoring into that, and there's political intrigue sort of that gets affected in that. And let me jump
seems to be
ahead
the
because I
issue
don't want
now.
to spend all day.
And
Okay, maybe I shouldn't.
popularization of other
Oh,
outcome. Our
interesting.
creative industry shown ever greater
It seems like he's actually leading into some of the same points. The Google Trend thing that EFAP went so hard on. And maybe I should pull it back a little bit more.
value.
Okay.
Once the economy was based on easy to comprehend market logic,
Oh, I hate this actual music choice of his. Hate it.
but now it's more like advanced quantum mechanics, where markets are changed by observation and prediction is impossible as it always impacts outcome.
So they try to hedge their bets, short selling, long selling, blah, blah, blah selling.
Creative industry show an ever greater focus on nostalgia because it reminds us of a past we feel we've lost in a world changing too fast for our comfort.
Yep. Declinism. Feeling that the world has gone and people taking advantage of that declinism with reboots, remakes, what they see as solid sellers. I mean, there is argument for the reboot cycle that I would make, but it's well overdone. At least with video games. Some of these remakes, I think, is a way to restructure things, like with Dead Space remake. If they remake 2 and actually correct the many problems with remake 3, you saw that in Resident Evil remake, and they're varying results. But let me not get too much off of the side tangent.
All while our online entertainment becomes dominated by devastatingly effective algorithms designed to understand what we want better than we could ever understand it ourselves. Nothing is simple anymore. Change is constant. We are increasingly disconnected from our material reality. And as for the truth, well, I guess that depends on who you ask. In 2016, the Oxford Dictionary declared post-truth to be the word of the year, citing the discourse around the Brexit referendum in the United Kingdom and the presidential election in America, while the popularization of other terms like fake news and alternative facts likewise suggest our grasp on the objective is not quite as strong as it once was.
All good points to bring up. Some people would read too heavily into this. He's definitely keeping this rather neutral, in my opinion. I'm not seeing anything to really indicate he's going one way or another, but he's just laying things out in a straightforward manner.
Not that most seem to have any problem with their own truth, however. I mean, appeals to my truth have also rose in popularity. Instead, it's everyone else's truth that seems to be the issue now.
Yeah, and a lot of people drop the my truth and just claim what they believe to be true as the truth.
Please welcome and absolutely
And lovely dealing with ads here. Thank you for I'm supporting him. Maybe I should support him a little bit longer for play for free cross net. I wonder if he'll get any. Probably not. So let's skip. Okay, yeah, my truth, your truth. The sort of critical theory is based all the offshoots off originally. Let me not get into that, but I had a whole video sort of covering the same thing. Could have probably actually went over parts of this video and it would have been completely fine. I'm finding absolutely no issue on his sort of history there. It probably is even more condensed and complete overall than things, but is there a turn? Is there sort of a indication, or is this just a straight objective thing he wants to outline without taking sides? Both sidism. Be careful of that. Never. Wait, This is your second channel. Maybe you don't care.
We struggle to find agreement through appeals to an objective truth. And surely the only response we can give to all this is to accept our ignorance. To say, yes, the world is complicated, unbelievably so, and it's just not possible to understand everything. It's not even close. There are an endless number of issues, perspective, facts, and fictions out there, and no one can stay on top of all of them. This is not a problem that can be...
Like, you know what's crazy? What's crazy is if the world really is flat, all logical, rational thought processes would totally discount that. But what if that was the truth? That'd be insane. Oh, God, let's hope that's not the case. Let's hope not everyone's believing a delusion and the flat earthers were right or the creationists were right. All those people we consider goops are really the right ones. That would be just freaking insane.
Overcome by expertise. No one can be an expert on everything. Hell, you're probably not even an expert on one thing. Nor does the answer...
Yeah, but also the power of the internet has a lot of people overcompensating what they're experts on. That is definitely something I think I would bring up. And I think that actually factors into this. Maybe I'm preempting him, but the damn man stole my idea and ruined it for me by making a personal attack. Well, I don't think it was a personal attack. It was an interesting choice what he did with his video. Sort of poisoned the well for me, even if he did have good intent, which I can't even tell if that was true.
Lie with your unique big brain. You are not the cleverest person in the world, and even if you were, it wouldn't be enough. Nor are you some inhuman logic machine. You're biased and flawed, just like everyone else you share this earth with is. And if you can see it in them, why can't you also see this in yourself? Not that your lived experience and your perspective isn't valuable, but it's just that, your perspective, one out of billions of others that you will live your life never being able to understand. And it's not your fault.
Yes, but you can attempt to sort of bridge that divide. Most people aren't incentive to actually do that. In-group preference opposed to out-group. I probably try to see the world through other people's perspectives, and it sort of muddies sort of probably how my messages come across, and trying to bridge that divide myself.
You weren't designed for this shit. You're only human. Your brain evolved to hunt animals and gather berries, and in another world, it will probably be good at that. It will probably be so good at that, but that is not our world anymore. Our world is 100
Yeah, go
questions
on.
humanity couldn't. During the Enlightenment, truth came from reason and science, and reason became the main tool humanity used to search for understanding. As modernity gave way to post-modernity, neither religion nor reason were up to the task anymore, but people...
He really does like to retread things. Just drill it into people's brain, maybe. Wonder how this kills his metrics, or if this is sort of a test. As he said, he was sort of testing sort of things out. Sometimes repetition, to a certain extent, is good. I cite the sort of illusionary truth effect, but that's generally with things that might not necessarily be true. That's the great way to create a narrative, by keep on hammering home the same exact sort of line of thought, even if it wouldn't be correct and people could poke holes in it. People just discount it because don't want to call it propaganda, but it's definitely something along those lines.
Choice. If anything, it was the opposite. In fact, it's that we don't realize what we've done that's half the problem. After all, the issue with religion was never that religion is bad. I mean, there may be some passages of religious text we have problems with today, but generally, each major religion offered much by way of wisdom and contained many ethical teachings.
Wow. A very balanced, unbiased look at this. Okay. Definitely not a hardcore leftist in this case, if he can say this. Very practical, reality-based mind. But he doesn't really like people, or probably doesn't want to be liked by people. It's a very general thing that ain't going to play very well to an audience. So definitely second channel material. I'm liking it, but I'm not quite the norm.
The problem with the aid of religion was that it was used to justify our biases without people realizing that's what they were doing. And so we waged whole...
See, I disagree with that. It was just the tribal mechanics that humanity sort of falls back on, or sort of a systematic view, a way to otherize, create stronger bonds between people within the in-group, and the ability to demonize the outer group, which we keep on seeing repeating. But I don't know how exact that is. That's a sort of common theme. Can't say every religion is sort of based off of that. Just an additional perspective I want to throw into this.
Holy wars, we executed thousands under the Spanish Inquisition, we burned witches and we stoned heretics, all while claiming this was in the name of our gods, the same gods that preached tolerance and kindness. We didn't just follow religion, we used it to justify our worst actions, when really we were acting out of a desire for glory or fear or to maintain social order. This was the same in the Age of Reason, where again, reason itself isn't to blame. Reason was responsible for sweeping advancements across society and has been a vital part of how we live our lives both before and after the Enlightenment. The problem, though, was once more how it was used to justify our darkest actions.
Yeah, people with power seek to subvert the sort of primalistic or the original intent of all these things and use it towards their own means to increase their own power. And of course, people, you create that sort of tribal mindset on this is the good thing to have, this is the good view, the good beliefs, and people are willing to sort of compromise their sort of questioning of those sort of things that sort of go against general human nature. And I don't even know if that's precise. It might actually be human nature to actually gravitate towards this for the majority. But let me not generalize too harshly here.
For example, we framed colonial expansion as being a civilizing mission that would benefit the primitive peoples of the world by spreading the wisdom of Western civilization.
Yeah, well, it sort of did in some places in reality. Not trying to defend that. I'm just saying it brought technology, but it brought a lot of pain, death, and there were some unintentional things like diseases, which we didn't understand when the people came to Americas, which helped the colonizers sort of take the Americas for themselves from those Indians who definitely got a raw deal. But there is this sort of flip side being left out of this, but it's I might inject in my own personal biases into this sort of wishy-washy thing where I think a little bit more nuance can be needed here, and maybe he sort of mix it later on here.
Even if we killed many of those primitive people in the process. The Nazis utilized scientific theory to explain German racial superiority and the need for eugenics.
Okay, he's homering this point. Seems okay. Let's see his
Communist faith in progress and a greater good was used to justify mass executions and totalitarianism. Reason.
He seems to be treating everything of the same kind. And of course, I get an ad because I'm not going to go red because we just brought up communism. You don't go red. Okay, that's sort of funny. Okay, let's see if it
More
gets
aware than ever before of the complicated and biased nature of our reality. Well, easily. The more complex the world becomes, the more we're forced to rely on interpretation, and interpretations of interpretation, and interpretations of interpretations of interpretation.
Yep, true. You get the trickle-down effect of information, the distortion, the telephone effect. Happens everywhere. Can't know what the true truth is, okay? You can only try to make sense of all the noise out there, and drowning in the noise is what this is all about. I'm thinking I'm knowing the general sentiment, but
Intent. We're playing a never-ending game of Chinese whispers, where reality is always getting further.
Okay, he's using the term Chinese whispers. I use telephone. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
And further away. And as interpretations allow room for subjectivity, interpretations also become contested. In fact, the marketplace of ideas may even create a demand and reward for competing interpretations. And so, truth.
Yeah, the marketplace of ideas. That's not just terminology, it's a literal fact. People build certain narratives based on certain wide scale beliefs, like the whole right left divide is based on commonly held narratives. And like the Kyle Rittenhouse one was an extremely big one. Johnny Depp seems to be a big one also. There's cultural flashpoints worth bringing up and discussing. And there is sort of it's not the truth. You can, based on the evidence presented, you have to accept that as reality. And people like to interject all these sort of bullshit things in between.
Becomes like a commodity in a supermarket. We're presented with entire shelves of truths, and we get to pick which one is right for us based on packaging, price, or past experience.
Very true. Very true. Okay. I don't know really how to solve this, but laying it out there, I don't like the frame in the truth. I mean, he even used it in his one video. It seems a little bit interesting. He doesn't actually assert the truth. He tries to muddy the truth of other people.
This even happened in certain sections of academia, like the humanities and social sciences, where the influence of postmodernism led to objectivity being increasingly rejected in favor of a greater focus on the subjective. This occurred alongside a growing belief that everything is inherently political, as even avoiding politics still leads to participation by supporting the status quo and those who already hold power.
Yeah, another way of trying to co-opt you into politics. It's just another narrative. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to the power thing. Can't really institute change without the power, but you don't really need to join in to politics. You can have a completely normie, non-political view and be perfectly fine, but there will be people who try to force you in by trying to make everything political. And it's truly a shame.
This meant being political came to be seen as not only permitted, as it's unavoidable, but also necessary, as it's the only ethical way to avoid contributing to the wrong politics. And so, parts of academia...
Critical theory, critical race theory, queer theory. I have a script in the works. Critical gamer theory. Or critical game theory, I think is the better term for it. That'll be quite interesting. I don't... I'm going to have to be careful of the wording in that particular one. So it might take some time, some double checking, blah, blah, blah.
became more and more political while embracing subject.
Just to let you know that's the sort of meme position I have. Critical game theory that I'll admit is sort of a joke theory. But the more and more I look at it, the more and more I think it at least has a utility and might even be a reality. I won't assert that it would be a truth. It's just a theory, okay? It's just a theory, just a game theory.
Activity. This proved very useful at exposing the ways in which society may have benefited some groups over others, but it also increasingly turned academic knowledge creation into a self-reinforcing process, where knowledge was produced in accordance with people's political ideology and biases, and the more knowledge created this way, the more people's political ideologies and biases were proven correct. And so, the more complex the world becomes, the more we're forced to rely on interpretation. And the more we rely on interpretation, the more we rely on ourselves to determine truth. And the more we determine truth for ourselves, the more we become trapped by our own biases. And the more we become trapped by our own biases, the more opportunity there is for something to exploit that.
Absolutely. You don't have to succumb to that. You can. The wise man, a truly wise man knows how little he knows, but many people do not actually embrace that philosophy because it's a political dead end. You won't make any change if you admit that you know so much, but you don't know enough to state a certain truth when there's a whole bunch of truth sayers and seekers out there proclaiming to have the truth. It's not going to be a popular position to try to be like, okay, come around me. Truth doesn't exist. I mean, yeah, it does. There is certain interpretations where we can say some things are factually correct, factually objective, but we can't know about other certain things. That plays against most people's biases. So why that's a caveat I'm putting into this, because it does exist. It's probably the minority for the most part and not politically or optimically viable, especially in the marketplace of ideas to really package and sell.
And exploit us, it does.
He did bring up, I think it was in the other video, that he thought 1984 is one of the most important books to read. And that definitely does explore these ideas in rather succinct manner, in a creative way that can resonate personally with a lot of people in a fictional setting. Value of fiction, that book has a lot, but damn, it's a slog to go through.
complicated reality and then cutting away at the complexities until you have a simple, understandable narrative that's designed to appeal to people's biases. Like all good stories, it makes sure to focus on an enemy, and like all good manipulations, it makes sure to include as much truth as it can fit.
Okay, there's a little bit of a bias here. I mean, is he going to do the other side?
Politics doesn't work through lies because lies are possible to disprove.
Okay, Biden's price. You can say there's a little bit of a right-wing bias here if you really read into it. Not sure about that.
I'm Ben, founder of
But of course, materialism, ads, fun stuff has to sort of fuck with my flow, don't you, man?
Works through hiding complexity, usually by substituting complicated questions of science, history, economics, statistics, philosophy, etc., into simple questions of morality.
Yeah, is the easiest way for a general audience to understand, and it plays into particular biases.
The classics: abortion. There are several issues that could be considered here, including fetal pain, fetal personhood, bodily rights, gender equality, the impacts of criminalization, the inefficacy of bans, the broader societal impacts, the rights of the unborn, moral philosophical arguments, religious beliefs, and so on. This is quite a lot, but many of these issues could be simplified if we could just answer one central objective question: when does life begin? In theory, this should be easy for science to handle.
Very interesting approach. He takes the abortion issue to sort of dive into this. Quite an interesting decision.
I mean, either something's dead or it's alive. There isn't usually much of an in-between. Science, however, has not only failed to produce an answer, but has also looked increasingly less capable of doing so as times went on.
Because it's more of a philosophy question. What is life? You need to answer so many other questions. Does it have value? Does the soul exist? There's so many different perspectives on this. I don't think, unless we become an NPC clone army who thinks all the same, I don't think this will ever be answered. Science can't answer unless science reaches the level and there is a sort of science of the afterlife and of God and all that. I don't think we'll reach that in our lifetime. I don't know if it'll be possible to reach, because there's some questions you can't just, like God. Atheists want to say he doesn't exist, the afterlife doesn't exist, but you can't disprove it. That's a simple reality of it. It's hard to disprove something that doesn't exist. Okay. Especially when there's so much out there. We can come to an understanding if we can understand like quantum mechanics and all that crap, because multiverse theory could be in reality. It's used in science fiction enough. Time travel, who knows if that's even possible in reality? Does it go against some certain laws, or if there's some science out there that we can figure a workaround to get time travel, alternate dimensions? Who knows? Will there ever be a science to discount these theories? Maybe there will be in the future, and we'll have this utopia, but I have doubt about that. I think there's always going to be limits to human knowledge, even to mechanical knowledge, now that AI is coming into play, but that's besides the point.
As with most things, abortion used to be simple. Long before ultrasounds and modern medical knowledge, life began at the quickening, which is the first time a woman feels the baby kick or move. This was meant to be the point where the baby came alive and received its soul, and this
Seems rather practical. You get some motion in there, okay? But science, of course, people can use science, religion, and all sorts of ways, as he already brought up.
idea dates back to at least Aristotle. Older abortion legislation actually centered around this, ensuring abortion was only legal before the quickening, else it could be considered murder. Science, however, disproved the notion of life beginning at the quickening and then kept going, complicating our understanding of fertilization and implantation by showing how many fertilized and implanted embryos are born naturally, alongside many other advances in knowledge that make determining the beginning.
Yeah. Sometimes knowledge can be a burden. Simple view is easier for a general audience to understand. Complex views will have a myriad of different opinions on it, depending what value you want to place on particular matters. It's quite a complex matter. And this is definitely a great example to use.
Of life harder and harder the more you know. In America,
I'm just sort of impressed by this sort of thing here from at least a rhetorical perspective. It's definitely a good angle to sort of take on this. Unexpected.
by allowing babies to be born more and more prematurely. And so, thanks to science, no easy answer was left.
But I would have to think on this for a more thorough, threshed out thing. I can always revisit and maybe think this is a completely retarded idea. Maybe I should listen to it to make sure he doesn't make a misstep.
Determine whether a human is dead or alive, so why not apply this to the fetus? Well, the reason is because we don't like the answer. Brain activity begins at around 6 weeks, which is far too early to be of much use in allowing people a chance to terminate their pregnancy, and so instead we use other metrics
Post hoc rationale right here at play.
like fetal pain that just so happen to be practical and line up with our historical traditions like that of the quickening. Still, this is all only scratching the surface of this topic and is completely ignoring numerous other related factors. For the record, Google Scholar brings up around 500,000 academic articles about the abortion debate, so maybe if you read all of them, you could say you have an in-depth and rounded understanding to form an opinion with, and doing so would only take around 228 years.
Yeah, but would that also give you the truth of it, even if you read all these debates? Some people might say it'd be as close as the truth as you can get, but I don't even think that. You could get lost in the noise.
Meaning you don't eat, sleep, or do anything else in that time. Abortion is complicated, but if you admit just how complicated it really is, you basically forfeit your right to a strong opinion. You also have to live with the fact that if you or your partner gets an abortion, you really may be doing something awful, while also living with the fact that to not allow abortion has countless other negative consequences on people's lives. Don't worry though, like with most things, politics has the answer, which it achieves not by actually answering any of the questions that matter, but by instead allowing you to successfully ignore them. Politics provides a return to simplicity. Either abortion is about controlling women's bodies and infringing on women's rights, or it's about killing babies and preventing murder. Take your pick, there's narratives designed to support both, and whichever you choose, you'll have plenty of company. You can even tell yourself that science.
And there's other weirder, more obscure particular narratives around almost any particular issue. I'm curious what some of the more obscure beliefs on abortion is, like babies are parasites or something else crazy like that. They should be killed. Then there's probably like, you can't abort at all. Well, that's some of the religious fundamentalists who would think. So that exists, and I'm sure the other one exists. Okay, let me not.
God, history, or whatever else you like is on your side because, hey, it's not like they'll turn up at your door and correct you. And you also get a free pass to ignore anyone who might try to complicate matters because you know your side is morally correct. And so the other side must be morally bad and therefore not worth considering. And if your moral conviction does ever waver, just remind yourself of the central truth that drew you to your side in the first place, i.e., controlling women's bodies is wrong. Women's rights have sometimes been historically infringed on, and some people really do want women to have less freedom and care little for their rights or suffering. Or alternatively, ending the life of a fetus is wrong. Abortion can be prevented, and some people really do show a complete lack of concern over the way in which their own actions can lead to the death of an innocent. The truth is on your side. It's always on your side.
Okay, the truth. Uses truth in quite an interesting way here. Not making a statement on truth.
It just happens to be on everyone else's side as well, and we've become increasingly less willing and less capable of differentiating between competing truths.
Are you a YouTuber?
Not really. I just make content for YouTube, so this ad is useless for me because of my particular sort of approach to making content on YouTube.
And fighting ideas can be difficult without accidentally acknowledging their.
See, some people will
Therefore,
think
most political action becomes focused.
the use of J.K. Rowling is quite an interesting choice here, given that he's and look, there's a TikTok pop up here. Okay, some people will think, well, he's taking a political stand, but your particular bias will actually bias you on what political stand he is, because trying to be good faith and neutrally approach this, say maybe he's a little bit more in the freedom side of things, but that really doesn't say the left-right divide, okay, of his personal opinions, because he seems to be leaving those out of this video at least, which he doesn't a lot. So when he does actually take a certain stance, makes me question, how he can justify that, if that says anything or what that says about psychoanalyzing people based on videos and limited knowledge is insane.
Focused on fighting people, or at least fighting the idea of them. To this end, an entire online infrastructure has been created to reinforce your beliefs while continually discrediting those who disagree. Competing ideas are represented through an endless stream of videos, live streams, news articles, social media posts, and screenshots that are able to cherry-pick their opposition by representing them through their most extreme or idiotic parts. Emphasis is placed on how biased the other side is, and as everyone is biased, evidence for this is easy to find.
True. Okay, what's the truth? Hard to tell.
Interpretations are always made in bad faith. Motivations are assumed or just invented. Words are taken out of context. Sarcasm and satire are presented as sincere and representative.
This one I love the most. Okay. Are the people stupid, not getting the humor of the other side, or is it just legitimately just a power play to make people's jokes seem more insidious? Like there was the whole thing where the Attack on Titan, a political candidate had a sort of meme he retweeted or some bullshit. People were saying, oh, it's sort of attack on someone because he retweeted this one little stupid little meme of Attack on Titan. Oh, so freaking insane.
And the marketplace of ideas is turned into one big kangaroo court where the opposition is always on trial but only ever gets represented by a straw man. Working alongside representation is the importance of repetition. As someone who knew a little about propaganda once said, repeat a lie often enough and it becomes the truth.
Yep. Illusionary truth effect. Okay. Keep harping on what he was trying to say with his video about about Pat repeating this one meme phrase and thinking Pat knows. That's where I divide on Never. I think maybe Never's perspective on that, maybe Pat really did think that they would believe it or just not realize where that would go and how Emil's actual response sort of would muddy that sort of narrative he sort of set out afterwards, the throw the monkey wrench and the super Chad cope response. Oh yeah, if people misunderstood it, I don't care. Blah blah blah.
And the more our complicated reality breaks down the borders between fact and fiction, the more impactful repetition becomes in determining what we believe. After all, people will believe almost.
Okay, let's take a look. I mean, I could go through this. This is 11 months ago. Okay. This reflects the same exact ideals, although with less bias as what's stated in his particular video on Emil. So people who think that this is a out there take for Never Knows Best obviously doesn't know Never's Know Best. He's been thinking about it for a while. Did he properly apply it? I think he did here. The Chinese whisper, telephone effect, crowd psychology. Yeah, structure of the video, still question it. And some of the pauses in between it makes me think that particular video was intentionally trying to get people to pause on those long pauses. Because does he normally pause widely in his videos? I haven't seen a good example of it in these videos when EFAP went crazy about the long pauses, which might have been intentional points where people were to pause to response, sort of a technique to get people to response after certain things or not. Maybe I'm just theorizing a little bit too heavily on that.
Anything if it is repeated enough times and they see enough other people also believing it. Meanwhile, the online attention economy continually rewards exaggeration and negativity while hiding the moderate and reasonable.
Yep. That's why it's tough for the moderates to get anything. Moderates got to put a particular spin of truth and reason balanced with accepting and listening to the other side. Moderates really have it tough. Okay. People of the rational, who sort of takes the sort of rational imperialism side and sort of take sort of how it crosses with personal perspectives. Really tough position. And I don't envy anyone who's really trying to make that content because really is weak. And my boys Stitch and Adam have a tough time They're probably going to fall one way and make some compromises that some people won't disagree with, but who knows how it'll fall out.
Internet personalities and the media not only profit from telling you what you want to hear, but also have a clear incentive to exaggerate as a means to create better content and justify their own beliefs and purpose. Not that these online personalities aren't.
Tim Pool, the Civil War, man. Yeah, it's a self-perpetuating spiral cycle that just a positive feedback loop. I know that always sounds weird to me. It should be a negative feedback loop, but any sort of feedback loop that sort of increases the amount of it is considered a positive, even if the sort of overall effect seems to be negative in the sort of a cultural breakdown and divide it creates within the audience out there. Quite interesting.
Victims in their own right, as well as through the process of content creation, they end up surrounded by other creators and fans who continually reaffirm their own views, all while they risk jeopardizing their career and future income if they ever stray from the party line. It's no surprise that online content creators tend to get more extreme in their political beliefs over time, while seeming to get captured by their audience.
Yep. Audience capture happens to almost anyone who rises in the ranks. I don't even know how that's an avoidable thing. You got to water down your message. You got to hone in your audience. There's a feedback cycle between audience and creator, at least the successful ones. How do you avoid it? I don't think it's possible. You would have to sort of try to get the audience to be more skeptical, and that's just hard. It's just really hard to try to push on that. You got to take advantage of the misinformation, maybe of both sides, to get people to come to a reasonable middle. I think that would be one good approach. I don't think he's going to probably cover it. I'd be interested if he proposes something, but this is just an understanding which seems rather accurate in my opinion. And a lot of people would disagree with this because they probably take one side or another on one particular issue or another. Their bias works against them believing this to be correct.
In an emergency,
And the ads are sort of working against me to have any sort of semblance in this. And my sickness is probably catching up with me if that's reflected in my voice. Do I have that Phoebe sexy voice? Probably not, but keeping this for the record for anyone who wants to look at my thoughts on this.
The places you get your news from, the people you spend your time around, all involve an element of choice, and all will push you towards whatever initial biases you might start with. I mean, everyone leans some way, and the system.
Yeah, the alt-right pipeline, but there's no alt-left pipeline. Bullshit. It works both ways.
Right, but online conversations still become dominated by the extremes.
Yep.
This isn't a representative democracy, and 10 people being quiet has far less impact than one person being loud. And those who try to avoid joining in or attempt to criticize both sides aren't safe from the system either, because when complex reality gets reduced to simple morality, not having an opinion.
Yeah, you become the enemy when you are criticizing both sides. You get double the sort of pushback to it. Okay. It's really tough. This is why most content creators, even Stitching Adam, who tries to play the middle thing, has a lot of pushback. They got a lot of right wingers in their audience, probably more majority, since they tend to lean towards that, given the more free speech aspect of the internet. But they also have, some of the leftists. Sadly, they're probably the best example that I've come across. There might be others out there that I haven't come across who sort of takes that center position. That is political. You can take a non-political position that's sort of that center position, but that's a little bit hard.
Comes just as bad as.
No, that's much, much easier. But it can come across as dishonest to a lot of people who have that particular bias when you don't take a particular thing, unless you're into it just for pure entertainment's sake.
Having the wrong opinion. After all, it's us versus them, and if you're not with us, there's only one side left.
Neutrality in the face of injustice is siding with the oppressor.
And so silence becomes violence, and at that point, you may as well pick a side, because at least then you don't have to stand alone.
Yep.
In fact, joining in makes a lot of sense.
Yep, the incentives for joining a particular group with particular group psychology. Probably why more individualistic people will fall into the centralistic, can fall into the centralistic perspective. Okay. And Never in his video, he doesn't like most people, most opinions, even within his own genre. He doesn't like people. I can't say the same. I do like people. I like getting different people's perspectives, but listening to them, seeing how they see the world, I find that more intellectually interesting. Do I find any of it true or factually based? Sometimes there's some facts that comes up I can agree with, and there's other things I'm like, okay, I don't agree with that. I'm trying to get to a sort of truth, and people bring up the sort of power dynamics, which is the truth, but it's not a truth that I think I should engage in. Many times has that happen on online conversations, and I'm like, sometimes you just got to buck the trends and try to be as vocal as you can. Another reason why I'm streaming and trying to make online content, despite not having any sort of aims at any lofty sub goals or audience or anything like that. Just individualistic. If you like what I'm going at, which is several different things, no overarching theme. You can find a few overarching themes, but I'm using them as an example. But yeah, I rambled on long enough here.
We're tribal creatures who have lost our tribes. We moved from villages into a digital world that spans the globe. And at the same time as this, all of the traditional things that humans formed tribal identities around, like religion, social class, nationality, and ethnicity, came to be viewed increasingly negatively. And so politics was able to take on an ever-increasing role as a way to find one's identity and a sense of community. And this wasn't the only place politics had a hole to fill. I mean, if there's one thing history and then later regarded as abhorrent. These days, you're not allowed to hate people for the color of their skin, their sexuality, gender, religion.
So you have to find other reasons to hate them, such as their horrible opinions on video games or politics or the hair products they use. Okay, the last one might be a bit extreme. But, there is the internet does make it easier to find people with very niche and weird sort of tribal politics. And there's almost an incentive to carve out your own niche, which I believe plays into some of the more exotic niches out there, like lolicons, furries, monarchists, Nintendo fanboys. Sorry, the last one's a low blow. Okay. Nintendo's a good company. They just are a little asshole-ish with their products, and their fanboys tend to be the most annoying when their consoles aren't great. Yeah, let me not dig myself into too much of a hole.
Or nationality, and doing so openly comes with severe risks. And so, politics became the last great bastion for hate. And what better quality to use? After all, skin color or sexuality.
See, I agree with the general sentiment, but again, I think he's way too focused on just politics when it comes with any tribal group that has been created. And with the introduction of online discourse in general, politics isn't the only tribal group. It was never one of the only tribal groups. It was one of the biggest ones, the easiest ones to sort of fall into. But in the internet space, the sort of tribalistic team sports nature has really fractioned to a million different things, different topics, which really can sometimes fall into political tribalism and sometimes it doesn't. Gamergate, for example, the skeptics, for example. There's so many examples of sort of people who align on a particular issue, but then there's other issues that they come in conflict with, and it creates divides with creating a large community. So it incentivizes more niche communities that sometimes cooperate with each other, even through minor disagreements. And does that sort of there's a certain audience capture factor to this, but there's also a matter of I'm trying to think of the correct words. I'm not going to, just for YouTube or online content creation, just the sort of friend dynamics, the group. And sometimes those will break apart and they'll form it with someone else. There's millions of different examples. I can't even list all of them, but they're everywhere. Find your particular sort of example wherever you want online. There's millions out. Yeah, there probably is millions out there, but there's a lot out there. A lot.
Are so superficial, but political beliefs run deeper. And not only is hating someone on the basis of their political beliefs allowed, it's often actively encouraged, just as long as you don't go far enough to commit a crime and make your side look bad.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, the double standards of this. We hate hate. We just hate. And we try to witch hunt haters of whatever particular thing. It's just something we fall into. And it makes sense that Never in his particular space would have gravitated towards people like Kurtos's and Pat's recent video if he has any awareness. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic there. Wonder how much investigation, research, everything else, but he's way too hush hush or anything like that. I'm not in league with him. It's quite interesting how in line that I'm finding myself with his general sentiment. And hell, that might even work against me if the tide turns against him in particular. Guilt by association, not just for leftists. Every tribal group will do that. Oh, you agree with this person who did this thing? Well, did they really do this thing? It doesn't matter. My whole group thinks that they did this thing. Fuck off, motherfuckers.
And why wouldn't it be encouraged? Hate is power. Some people might try to tell you hate is just an accident or a byproduct, but it's not. Hatred is deliberate. It's a feature, not a bug. After all,
See, there are people who direct the hate. Hate is a natural component, in-group, out-group thing of psychology. I mean, definitely I can get behind the general sentiment, but his sort of a one-sided framing, I think he might be doing this for political viableness or at least rhetorical viability, okay, to make his point. When he said himself, a nuanced position is really hard to get across. So maybe that's why he's making some of the decisions. He recognizes that the intent to Pat doesn't matter, okay, and that maybe he's being unfair by saying Pat attended to actually have his meme have this misinformation effect that I do agree with. Pat's video does propagate, and it doesn't matter his intent. He'll just assume his intent for the sort of rhetorical viability of that argument. But again, just speculating. I mean, there's a place for speculating, and you just need to let that known because there's so much information out there, so many different perspectives, so many facts or truths. It's hard to really tell what's real in the world, and people might disagree with both me and Never's sort of consensus on this political idea that this is how communications and the truth is used online. But that's besides the point.
how do you win this great culture war of ours? You can't kill the opposition. You can't stop their genetic line. You can't remove people's right to speak, at least not in most places. And democracy is slow, unreliable, and increasingly, apparently, rigged. Hate, though, has an impact. Spread enough of it and people become scared to stand in its way. It silences voices that might disagree and makes an example of those who don't know better. Hate is the only power most people have, and so they use it to cancel, shame, bully, or harass, and it works. In a world where everyone has their own truth, changing people's minds through appeals to logic and reason are difficult, but trying to control people through hatred and fear is a lot easier.
I wish this wasn't the case. It almost seems pro J.K. Rowling on this case. Is he a turf? No, I don't think he is. He's just sort of laying out the facts, and it's a great case study for this. No matter how you feel about it, people will let their biases let them hate J.K. Rowling or hate the people who are mischaracterizing J.K. Rowling. When the truth is really much, much more complex than that.
Still, you would think we might know better. It's the only lesson history screams at us to remember. It's the most important thing we teach our children, and we create laws over speech, making sure the types of hate we don't like are strictly punished. Everyone knows hate is bad, and yet everyone makes an exception when it comes to the people they hate.
Because hate is natural. Hate is a great tool to take advantage of in social dynamics. You can justify any sort of actions to the out group, the demonized outsiders group. Having sympathy for Hitler or understanding for him will get you labeled as a Nazi supporter. They demonize the very idea of humanizing certain people who have hateful beliefs. Hate builds on to hate. The only thing that you can hate is hate on certain circles. I think it's just more honest to just hate everything, okay, with a decent level, be an annoyance, and like things to a decent level. But that's just me.
All is fair in love and war, as long as it happens to the enemy. I guess people hope the ends justify the means, but I do have to wonder just how much hate we need to spread before hate is apparently defeated. How much harm do we need to do before we can...
Yeah, this is a little bit stupid. I think you would probably agree. He's reiterating on this point. I don't think there's much that I need to reiterate on myself, but yeah, it creates a positive feedback loop, okay? We just need to stop hating if we want to get rid of hate, or take that hate down a notch, okay? And realize we don't need to hate the people we disagree with, okay? We just simply don't.
Everything is also becoming a battleground.
We can just argue. We can hate the ideas without... there's something in Christianity I think is good. Hate the sin and not the sinner. If we can take this approach and not take a moralistic sort of approach to what we hate the ideas, and maybe feel pity for some of the people who have ideas we hate. But people generally transpose ideas with the people spreading those ideas. Well, Never did that in his video. He, in fact, almost encouraged it in a really weird way. So, quite an interesting mess to go through and try to speculate on why we can only know about people's actions through what they do.
The content we consume, the media we watch, the products we purchase, entire online forums and spaces, everything reflects our division. Everything is a statement. Everything is an opportunity. When I grew up, I remember hearing people say that you can't trust politicians. Today, everyone's a politician and everything is political, and so people trust nothing outside of that which agrees with them.
See, why that's not necessarily true. For the point of the message, I agree with it, but factually true? No, of course not. That's overblown. But you can definitely say a lot of the influencers do this. There are some influencers out there, very few, who will actually try to clear up the divide. And sometimes their bias will throw them off in certain instances. But we should encourage those people not just to be like, when they fuck up, that they need to be canceled. Just be like, okay, I think you fucked up there. Fine enough. I agree with your general processes, but yeah.
And so everyone is on the side of science, just as long as science remains on their side. Everyone supports the law until it makes a decision they disagree with, and everyone supports democracy, unless they lose. It's hard to blame people that much either. Anything that's political really is biased, and we've become experts at identifying bias in all areas except ourselves. The sad part, however, is that at least establishment sources typically operate through checks and balances. Academic papers are peer-reviewed. Journalists have bosses.
They should be peer review. Doesn't know. Well, I guess it probably wouldn't help his argument. Good academic papers are peer review tested, and there's some in sociology that really aren't. Okay, why the grievance studies happen. But let me not muddy the water here. His general sentiment seems to be a positive one, and I can approve.
And libel laws. Politicians get called out for lies and have to face elections and so on. None of this applies to an anonymous source on the internet. And so as people increasingly use political ideology to determine what or who to trust, they increasingly open themselves up to being misled and manipulated even further. And the more political and the less trusting we become, the less we're capable of resolving differences and making progress. That's what politics was meant to be about, in case you've forgotten. It's the way we make decisions as a group and overcome problems together. Different perspectives are meant to be valuable, and each side has a vital purpose in helping to question and balance the other, an idea which shows up in philosophy, both ancient and modern, Eastern and Western, and in both science and religion.
Yep. Beautiful message to sort of end on. Let's get to the conclusion. There's a lot of redundant stuff in his things. I understand from a rhetorical perspective. He harps on the same points, gives many examples, tries to cover it as broadly as possible. But I'm reviewing this for a deep dive, or dive, because let's not go deep.
But it's no one's fault. Every step we took to get here is understandable. Once upon a time,
It's no one's fault. Some people would disagree.
Life was simple, and we did the best we could at dealing with the added complications that progress brought. In doing so, we realized how biased everything is and how little there is we can truly trust. And so we placed our trust in the one thing we had left that we thought we could rely on, ourselves, without acknowledging that we are biased just like everything else. And so the more
Yes, but there are some people who are willing to admit they're biased. Again, it's just as big content creators, there's not an incentive to actually admit that bias. It makes you appear weak to sort of take concessions. You lose. It's optically unviable on social media to, so there's a sort of a element here from this that is missing, but the general sentiment is correct. I guess he has to do this, or it feels he has to do this for the rhetorical effect of it, because he did put in that sort of thing that it isn't that simple. But people who would have gone through this, hear these declarative statements later on, would miss the part in the beginning where he goes on and on, like about the abortion thing. So many different opinions. Would that make you unbiased if you got through it, or would that make you more biased if you went through over 200 years of these arguments over abortion?
trust we place in ourselves, the more we become prisoners of our own bias. Politics exploited this by providing a return to simplicity and crafting narratives that continually confirm our biases. And once you join a side, the system is designed to make sure you never escape.
See, positive feedback loop. As I said, always weird.
Bias is unavoidable, but politics shouldn't be this way. Everyone wants to make the world a better place, but everyone also has a responsibility.
Again, disagree. There's some people just don't care. They want to see the world burn. But for the general sentiment, people want to make the world a better place.
To question whether their actions are truly achieving that. It's not enough to say that the truth is on your side. That's what everyone says.
Yeah, but you also get into the sort of a indecisive trap of Chibi from A Good Place is a great example of that. He ended up in the bad place because of his sort of ethical dealings. He could never make a decision. Indecisiveness of overcomplication. And let me just clear this out.
It is our fate to suffer under this complication. It makes sense that we might long for a way out and for something or someone to provide us with simplicity. And so people do provide that, and they become experts at it. Don't trust these people, especially when they tell you what you want to hear.
Yep, absolutely. Don't trust Pat, Kurtosis, Never, me, anyone else there. Unless they're like, think for yourself, okay? I personally think this is stupid. I think this argument here, this sort of methodology of this 8-hour video continually harping on the sort of a no design document meme is stupid and mean to mislead people. Okay. You can do that. Rhetorically, it's inefficient. Okay. It's better to go for the heart and take certain tactics to optimally make it go across. Drama is a great way to sort of get a message out when most people wouldn't care normally about certain matters.
If there is one thing you can be sure of, it's that the world is complicated. So if there is one person you shouldn't trust, it's the one who tells you everything's simple. This is the truth in the age where truth has died. The world is complicated.
Rather redundant state, saying it's the truth where the truth doesn't exist. Sort of a backwards logic. Interesting.
Everyone is biased. Opinions are flawed, and understanding is limited.
Yep.
This is how the world is. You don't get to understand everything.
Nope.
You don't get to be
We
right
are not
all
gods.
of the time.
Nope.
And you don't get to be the one person that is immune to bias. All you get is a choice in what impact you will have. And more people are using that choice to spread hate. The world is not in your hands, but your actions are.
And I think we've come to the sort of crux of the issue here. Never's personal problem with the particular video of both Kurtosis and Pat. maybe even Osmond Gold, but I think that was more to get the message out. Okay, that was a very light little thing in there when I think he could have gone a little bit more into how his perspective shapes the sort of general culture, given he's the biggest content creator out of them. Absolutely understandable why he took the approach he did and why that's there. But this besides the point. You have never know best. And this is knows best never. And I can actually approve of this. Okay. Seal of approval. And it seems very competent, seems very level headed. I tell a sort of dumbass joke from Pat about him being a cuck would have just totally set him
Hello.
over the edge in any particular manner. But I could be wrong. I have a particular bias based on what I'm seeing in particular. And I want to take a.
It's
just
true. You can be a nurse
wow,
anywhere.
wow. That volume is horrible. I want to see because I really want to know. He said in his video, Starfield. So I want to take a quick look about Starfield in his particular video. Let's hope it's spelled correctly. So I'll bring it back up just for a completionist so I can get this out of the way.
And game developers, but some of the most ambitious, famous redemption stories, as well as some of the biggest games ever made, some of the most ambitious projects ever conceived, and more recently, Starfield, a game made by Bethesda that has created an awful lot of discussion around space exploration. Yes, the appeal of this concept clearly runs deep, and it's not hard to understand.
Okay, so there is a big section about Starfield. Talks about other things, but that's not what you're here for. We're here for the Starfield take, okay? Which we'll probably jump ahead, but a preamble to Starfield.
Why people want to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Plagiarism! Dude, just plagiarized Star Trek. Someone should note this down. Clear plagiarism.
And video games are one of the only mediums where that's actually...
You would probably call it a homage, a reference, blah, blah, blah. Well, someone could make the claim he plagiarized that.
possible. But dreams are one thing. Reality is often quite different. So I want to look at how various games have handled space exploration over the years and at how close modern games have come to achieving this dream. Because space is captivating, but it's also challenging.
As one person once said, space is big. Okay, let me get to this. Let's see if there's a lead into it. Give a little bit of a lead in.
Exploring space. All three games have colorful histories, are massive in scale, make heavy use of procedural generation, feature similar features of space travel, space combat, and planet traversal, and all three once generated a lot of hype, and might also have been responsible for a substantial amount of disappointment. And yet, despite these similarities, all three games are often remarkably different, in large part because each one comes from a different genre. Elite Dangerous is a space sim through and through. No Man's Sky is very much a survival game, and Starfield is an open-world RPG. As a result, while all three games might share the same dream, the way in which they try to achieve it, and what exploration actually means in each game, is completely different. And these differences ultimately reveal a lot about why space exploration is such an intriguing yet challenging concept for video games.
Okay, this doesn't seem like it's going to be a critical deep dive into Starfield, but this is what we got of Never Knows Best on Starfield. So let me add this to the sort of mess of this dive I'm doing into him for completionist state. Not to be related to the completionist, who the sort of fraud thing. Forget I said that.
So let's talk about the big three, starting with the most recent. Bethesda might be new to space, but they have plenty of experience at creating large open worlds. Few modern games have had as large an influence as 2011's Skyrim, and few RPG series have come close to matching the popularity of The Elder Scrolls or Fallout. And so, leading up to its release, expectations for Starfield were understandably high, although...
Okay, why some people would argue with him, I think that would be a fair assessment. Even if you don't agree that the Fallout or Elder Scrolls are good games. The public perception is something to factor in, and they are popular franchises that Bethesda have the reins on, no matter how you personally, with your personal bias, feel about them.
Fan reaction has seemed more mixed since. Still, much of Bethesda's well-established RPG formula has been successfully transplanted into Starfield's new space setting, and Fallout 4 in space is hardly the worst description of what this game is actually like. A few hours into the experience, you'll soon be inundated with a vast range of side quests, while much of your time is spent shooting enemies, collecting loot, and picking up different unneeded objects, often as you move through distinct dungeon-like locations to complete quests and gain money and experience points. For many, this is familiar stuff, and there's a sense that Bethesda took an if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach to Starfield's core design, in the hopes that repeating what worked before would work again, in spite.
Yep, that's a general sentiment that people can sort of get behind. There's a lot of similar overarching elements, and you can say they sort of got it broken, and Bethesda hasn't realized. Naked Jakey had Bethesda's design is outdated. Definitely something I want to go through in a critical mind. I see how he approached it in comparison to other people.
Of any differences created by the setting. That said, there does seem to have been some attempts to improve on past games' more criticized areas, in particular the depth of RPG mechanics, which many saw as reaching a new low with Fallout 4.
Yeah, and like with Fallout 3 to Fallout 4, whatever you have to say, the criticism of Fallout 3 is, well, why I'll defend it. It's a very minority position that it's mainly a carnivore diet, which popularized by Jordan Peterson and his daughter, the carnivore diet, which is broken up. It's viable. It's not really healthy unless you have supplements or crap like that, but it is doable for human beings. But I have a particular perspective on that. So they did the whole crop thing, base building. Maybe they went too far with that. And again, definitely there is some hints with Starfield, especially with the vast amount of back lore, with the sort of colonies, sort of how they established that and had the character walk through it. That seems to be a response to some of the criticism. At least that's the way I feel about it.
To this end, the protagonist is no longer voiced. Dialogue choices are less restrictive as they no longer follow the same rigid formula. More quests seem to involve elements of player choice. The level up system leans more into encouraging specialization, with several important features being initially locked off entirely without investment, and so on. The net result of all this is not huge, but it is noticeable. Starfield.
Yeah, it's definitely an increase, and definitely is thing that it seemed like they tried, but is it enough for some people? Not particularly. Is it even enough for me? I'd say it's a little lackluster. It's better than Fallout 4 and 76. Good response to feedback to customers. Yet it's the right lightning rod or the trifecta of criticism right now because of so many factors that I'll have to get into at some point.
Build also introduces some new systems into the mix, like the impressively in-depth shipbuilding or the more substantial role of companions who now also act as crew on your ship.
Yeah, I like the shipbuilding. If anyone wants encapsulation, broad scale, surface level, go watch Upper Echelon's second video about Starfield. Might actually have to work that into my final thing. I differentiate from him in a couple of different areas, but that's my broad scale analysis, his second video.
For all these similarities and improvements, however, there is still one substantial difference between Starfield and past Bethesda games, which is that its open world is a lot less open this time round. Space is vast, and
yes, understatement. They severe criticism for this, and I don't actually blame them. The open world design was completely broken in Bethesda's fans' mind with how this game was necessarily needed to be built. Okay, and the new engine, Creation Engine 2, I don't know how much that factored into the sort of zoning decisions they did and processing power. Maybe Never knows more about this. I'm not going to defend that particular attack of criticism. It's certainly valid, and he's bringing that up here.
Starfield features over 1,000 planets. meaning its various in-game activities are dotted around its galaxy, rather than all being contained on a single seamless map, with traveling between these activities now being mostly done through menus. Fast travel was a big part of past Bethesda games too, but its role is even larger this time round, as it's the only way to navigate much of its world, ensuring a lot of time is spent in the game's somewhat clunky menus.
Correct.
Some space games do allow seamless travel from one planet's surface to another, but Starfield shows little interest in space travel in the first place.
Well, just to defend Starfield for a second, there are ways that you don't have to go to the menu to go to certain objective points that you mark on your map, but that's a totally different side thing. You don't have to go into the menu. If you have something indicated, it'll give you a point, and you can just like zip out that way with a couple of caveats here and there.
The player's ship instead existing to act as a sort of mobile house, as well as to facilitate its rather basic ship combat. For a space sim, this would be sacrilegious, but a space sim, Starfield is not, as is soon made obvious by the fact that the ship UI is simply overlaid on top of its in-game visuals, rather than being incorporated into its design.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it's a good perspective to have. It's the genre is it's a fundamental idea of mine that the genre is important to factor in when sort of looking at any particular type of medium. You wouldn't say, oh, that horror movie had too much death and too much blood and too much gore. It's just not something you would say about a slasher film. You might have a particular bias or disdain for that genre, but you would have to factor that in, what the aims of the developers are trying to do. Yeah, not a defense, just sort of letting out my thoughts about my particular ideas about criticism, which is fairly consistent. I believe in keeping a consistent sort of model within my criticism to sort of offset any bias. I take in consideration the genre anything is in, what their aims, how well they effectively go about doing what they're doing within their particular genre, not just a broad scale. This is why I'll defend a couple of choice things that have led to quite a few arguments overall.
Still, even for those not expecting Starfield to incorporate space sim elements into Bethesda's classic RPG design, its heavy reliance on menus and fast travel still comes across as surprisingly disjointed for an open world game. Starfield also struggles with portraying its vast scale in an immersive and believable way. One of the easiest ways...
I agree. It can definitely come across as disjointed if you want to take a look at previous Bethesda titles. And I can see that personal perspective. But personally, I'm not seeing how it actually affects it. I mean, yeah, if you want to treat it like other things, immersive sims, it definitely would be disjointed. But then I'm not fully fleshing out my thoughts about Starfield here. I'll probably be a few months down the line, given how I work.
To increase immersion in games is to zoom in, as the less you try to portray, the more realistic that portrayal often is. Depicting a believable sense of scale is something even past Bethesda games have struggled with, as can be seen with how frequently Skyrim has been criticized for its unrealistically small capital cities that contain only a handful of buildings.
Yeah, but that's Bethesda in general. The space between from what the fuck? Fallout 3. I live in the general area. I can't walk from DC to Bethesda in the time I can in the game. There is certain allowances you have to make in this. And you could also criticize what's it called? The darling of the anti-Bethesda people, Fallout New Vegas, for having the same exact problem. Double standards and all there. Okay. I think it's just an allowance for that type of game. Locations aren't going to be realistically depicted because just like space travel can't be frictionless in it, because frictionless space travel would make a horrible simulation. Would make horrible dogfighting in space for Starfield.
Instead of zooming in, however, Starfield zooms even further out, forcing it to rely heavily on procedural generation to populate its vast in-game galaxy. Procedural generation,
which is half measure. There is a criticism I definitely heard that I agree with, is that they have procedural generate planets, but when you come across one of these bases, everything is the exact same in certain bases. That definitely is an oversight. They needed to add that procedural generation element to those bases. I don't know how they were so stupid to not actually add that into that. I don't think the person who decided that or didn't put that in should be fired, but it was a bad decision, and nevertheless.
seems to be viewed quite negatively within gaming at this current moment in time, but it's worth considering that it does have many positives, and many games have benefited from it over the years. It's what the roguelike genre is built upon. It's what made Minecraft the most successful video game of all time, and it was a massive part of the original elite, meaning it has a long-established precedent in space-based games. Procedural generation isn't inherently bad. It's a tool like anything else, and what matters is how it's used. When it comes to immersion, however, the more noticeable procedural generated elements are, the less immersive they often become, as it makes the world feel more artificial. When something is handcrafted, we know that it was important to someone and that there was some kind of artistic vision behind it where decisions were made for specific reasons. But with procedural generation, this isn't the case anymore, and it can make things feel
Yeah, and the sort of juxtaposition between the procedural generated elements of Starfield with some of the handcrafted elements, such as the cities, comparison to the procedural generated mess of that tends to be completely unbalanced. There's some places where there's almost no enemies at all. There's other places where you'll hit a patch where you're constantly in conflict with these aliens in Starfield. It's just very unbalanced. I can't agree with that. I just don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I can agree it would definitely affect, and it definitely did affect my play experience of it. But within the genre and what it is, I don't know if it's necessarily bad. Sometimes it's better just be like, okay, feel what you want about this particular element.
feel less real and somewhat meaningless as a result. Compared to some games, Starfield's procedurally generated planet surfaces and locations might seem quite impressive, and they certainly look the part, with both interior and exterior locations often being stylish, authentic, and suitably spacey. But I don't think most people will compare Starfield to other procedurally generated games. Instead, they'll most likely compare it to Skyrim or Fallout 4, and the result
Yeah, that's their market. Okay. Oversight of what sort of game that they wanted to design. They definitely did take a risk, several risks with Starfield, and they definitely did not execute it on some of the decisions they made in Starfield generally. I'll probably have to flesh it out in a script for the future, but that's besides the point. There's many different elements at play here. He never seems to be trying to do an overlay of this in a sort of comparison between three videos, which the number 3 is a special number, and I can approve of this. But let's just look at his Starfield take. Not much longer, and I'm sort of blah, blah, blah.
is that its procedural generation starts to feel quite noticeable. Land on any one of Starfield's 1,000 plus planets, and no matter where you choose to go, you'll find a handful of locations conveniently placed nearby. Explore several planets this way, and you'll soon start to find those locations repeating, with you possibly even seeing the exact same caves or fungal growths. You would think that some planets
Yeah, correct. That's what I was bringing up. Same position of characters within dead bodies, and definitely breaks the immersion. Like, oh, this is some crap. What? Why didn't they include the procedural generated element within these caves, within these bases? I don't really know why. It really was a stupid decision.
might be a lot emptier than others, particularly as the few cities that exist within this universe are rather small, suggesting humanity's reach is quite limited. And yet, no matter which planet you go to or where you choose to land, various human-created outposts never seem too far off. A lot of flora and fauna seem quite
Yeah, and it's also annoying that. Sorry, let me not get into my criticism. Definitely have a criticism for the relics and how that plays into the overall game. But that's from my review.
similar to each other too. And really, the more you explore this way, the more noticeable the procedural generation becomes, and the less believable the world feels as a result. The new exploration-based activity of surveying also seems poorly designed and offers little reward, with the need to scan multiple copies of each plant or animal just feeling like uninteresting busy work.
And there, oh, freaking hell. And there are freaking little perks you can take, but they seem rather useless in the long term overall. There's a lot of little perks that seem convenient to speed up the sort of scan process, but they really need to like subset it. Like plants and animals have different things. It just doesn't have the value it needs to have. Definitely another thing I'm willing to say right out about Starfield that's a problem.
Exploration seem to be encouraged, with landscapes that are designed to draw players in and make them want to find out what's over the horizon or what story might be connected to a certain location. In Starfield, however, that doesn't really happen, as deep down, you always know that what's over the horizon is just another procedurally generated location that has no...
Correct. Can definitely agree with this criticism. Wholeheartedly 100% with this. But what's the solution for it? I think there should be, I don't know if this is possible, have sort of subsets within this, certain design elements within the procedural element to sort of give some variety to these procedural generated. I'm pretty sure that can be done, and it really should have been done, but learn the lessons, move on, and definitely criticize Starfield is not a 10 out of 10. Hell, even giving it an 8 out of 10 is a little bit of a stretch. I can see people doing it, but I personally wouldn't.
no more theoretical value than any other procedurally generated location you could see instead. As a result of all this, you could say Starfield is the least exploration-based Bethesda RPG, and it does do that traditional get out into the world, go wherever you want, and find some interesting content style of gameplay worse than past Bethesda games. But this is, in many ways, the result of the setting.
Okay, I can agree with that. Let's see what he's got here. Yeah, definitely does it worse, and definitely is going to create a sort of cognitive dissonance and sort of a backlash, different game design that seems messier, but it is inherently built into the setting. Could have been executed so much more better, as I threw out there, and I don't think Never's going to explore it because that's not the purpose of this video of his. It's just seems to be really objective with some minor notes that he probably aligns with his own personal take with other critics.
If Starfield had one planet instead of 1,000, alongside a more traditional connected open world map, it might have been a better game. But it'd also be a game about exploring that one planet, rather than exploring space. And part of what makes space exploration interesting are the differences between planets and the vastness of space. Different stars coloring different skies, different gravity values, different atmospheres, different life forms.
See, some people are going to see this as a defense. I'm going to see this as just a fact of the matter, okay? You can definitely criticize the way they execute it, which he did, with acknowledging that the setting, that's a value that needs to be placed on it. So, no general problems with this in reality. I take minor nitpicks here and there and think there's some expanse here, but different goals, different formats, different people.
Different challenges, as well as that feeling of not being sure what's out there, of seeming infinitesimally small by comparison, and that fantasy of traveling the stars into the vast unknown where the possibilities are endless. Maybe.
So he starts with all the cons, all the criticisms, which I can generally agree with on a broad scale. And then he goes into sort of the highlight, the tense, the beautification of this.
Starfield should have kept its ambitions in check. Maybe Bethesda should have stuck to what they know. Maybe space exploration is deep down one big trap. But regardless, I still can't bring myself to blame Starfield for trying, particularly as...
Yeah, neither can I. But I actually paused. One big trap. Funny in retrospect about this, the trap. Oh, it's bait. It's a trap. It's ARG. For anyone who hasn't seen anything, some of the stuff I'm talking about is going to be a loss. But who'll watch this who's not invested?
As other games that have attempted space exploration show a lot of the same problems. And if Starfield does fail at that more traditional style of physical exploration, it does still find success in a different way. I think the best way to describe this game It's that it's a space adventure.
Yeah, I think they really should have done more with this sort of interdimensional thing here that they went through. Definitely something worth criticizing. They give you a taste of this sort of going between two different dimensions, but it's only contained within this one thing. There's other things I'm sure they could have implemented. There's a lot of good ideas within individual quests that definitely would make it seem sort of the design doc. It feels like there's no design document or no communications, but I don't think that's the reality of it. I just think they wanted to limit this and not realize how it'll come across as a whole. And the general Bethesda fan base is taken back just because it's a space game and the natural inhibitions, along with the realistically short-sighted things that I really hope Bethesda will take some of the criticism and make some of the changes needed. It's a sad fact of the matter that that's how the gaming market is. They put out something, and this is one of the most stable Bethesda games to come out, and they'll, just like they sort of fixed the thing with Fallout 3, that horrible ending where you were forced to either go through the chamber yourself or be asshole and said Sarah lines through it. They corrected that. It's a weird sort of a market we're going into, and I can understand why people aren't satisfied with that, but they also want the game out really quickly also. It's sort of a catch-22 or almost a paradoxical thing. At least it didn't arrive in the broken state of Fallout 76 or Cyberpunk 2077, or with the really underwhelming thing of No Man's Sky. I mean, yeah, it has a lot of problems, but the overhype of it is just amazing to me.
Simulator. Starfield cares little about the laws of Newtonian physics or space travel logistics, and its many planets act more as backdrops than main attractions, because really, this game is all about telling a vast range of classic sci-fi stories. There is a lot of content.
Okay. I can agree with that. I just don't know how you can actually do maybe actually never brings up one of these other space games that uses the Newtonian physics. I'll go on in my own time so I can really come to some interest in other things that I have in the works, but that's besides the point.
Content in this game, and most players will find their quest logs packed with different leads to pursue, all of which are designed to take you on weird and wacky space adventures that will have players doing all sorts of different things in all sorts of different places. Starfield's setting is neither hugely realistic, nor is it especially exotic or original, but this does provide the writers with a lot of freedom to just throw in whatever pulpy sci-fi trope or concept they feel like to spin their own little self-contained story out of. And some
people are probably going to criticize it for that element. Oh, it's not realistic. Okay. I actually think fan service is important, as long as it doesn't take you too immersive, and there's other elements that sort of throw you out, which definitely worth criticizing.
These stories are a lot of fun. The highlight of this game has to be its 4 faction quest lines, which all explore a single classic concept while getting more time and budget in that exploration than most other quests. And so you infiltrate a group of space pirates, play your hand at high-stakes corporate espionage, uncover the secrets of a mysterious, deadly alien monster, and go on a hard-boiled space western detective story. And overall, these are pretty good, and better than many of the faction quest lines seen in previous Bethesda games.
Yeah, I will agree with the sentiment. They're really well implemented. This is why they're right in criticism. I can agree with the design criticism. Okay, I'm fine with the design criticism. There's a lot of little weird things within it. Disjointed, no design. It feels like no design document. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. Maybe it's more about the QA department and not getting it played enough to sort of see how the players will experience it, or maybe they didn't have a diverse group enough play testers to sort of correct some of the decisions that they got criticized afterwards. But that's just all speculation there. Okay, I can agree with the general sentiment here.
Throw in plenty of gorgeous space vistas and some interesting handcrafted locations, as well as some weighty choices in how to resolve these quest lines, a bit less combat focus in quest design than is usual for Bethesda, and even some nice rewards, and you have many hours of solid spacefaring content to lose yourself in. The main story feels a bit less successful, particularly in its weak premise and awkward early hours, and Bethesda's characters and writing have long been rather goofy in a way that often undermines more serious moments. But
see, I disagree with this, but I have a different perspective on this than Never and most people. Okay, like most people won't defend Moyer Brown's silly characterization. Why, I'm perfectly fine with it. Okay, different in perspective. Okay, I do agree. The bare bones mainline story quest is very weak. There's some strong points in it, like the one quest where you have to look for that one piece and go through 2 different alternate histories in that one place. That I would have liked to see other creative decisions made along those lines. But ultimately, also, the sort of goal of that mainline quest to take you into another universe is quite an interesting little element that I can't disagree with. Still sorting out my feelings about that mainline quest. It has pros and some cons, but not like in that particular thing, but different perspective.
when Starfield isn't taking itself too seriously, it has a lot of fun stories to tell, and I think that is what this game is all about. Starfield explores space through stories, and while the quality of these is mixed, with realism rarely seeming a priority, plenty are still entertaining, and the game certainly doesn't lack quantity. This might not be what some players wanted, and there might be areas.
Yeah, and that's another criticism I've heard. A lot of anti-Bethesda people, Fallout 3 had very little quests. Oh, they just did the Fallout 4 only had as much quests because of Radiant quests, blah, blah, blah. So that does also seem to be a factor that they took in, a quantity approach that isn't quite as badly implemented as the Fallout 4. And let's not even bring up 76, multi-online player. That was bound to be a disaster. And there's some people who like it. I can't get back into it. I can understand the appeal, but not for me.
That could do with improvements. But as a space adventure simulator, Starfield does have a lot to offer. The downside to this is that the physical process of exploring an open world is less of a focus this time round, and what sense of exploration the gameplay does offer is brought down by procedurally generated content and the heavy emphasis on menus and fast travel.
Can agree with that in generality. All that stuff can be fixed. It's not a defense, but it is a philosophy, and I that's my hope. Like even with 76, I didn't actually have an issue with the broad scale empty world from the initial. I thought it was all the other design features of 76 and the brokenness of it when it came out, along with a whole bunch of other crap that I don't even want to bring up that I had a problem with. Them implementing you when you first play, you go out into the world completely empty, a patch system, which probably should have been implemented before they did it, and almost probably seemed as if they were doing it in response to criticism. But that's if I was planning to do it, that's how I would have done it in phases to make the initial players feel like in an empty world. Probably bad in retrospect and from a marketing perspective, but naturalistically, it felt you first play it from the start. If it wasn't so broken from the start, you'd be in this empty world. They would implement things changing it as they've done it. Still, not for me.
It's also fair to question whether Bethesda's open world design has stagnated. For a long time, Bethesda was ahead of the curve in creating open worlds that were not only visually impressive and vast in scale, but that also went further than others to simulate certain immersive aspects, like by making every object in game interactable, or in giving every NPC a daily schedule to follow. But open world games have come a long way since Oblivion, while Bethesda have done little to improve their open world design outside of visuals, and even in this aspect, they aren't really ahead of the curve anymore. And so it's understandable that some people expected Starfield to represent a new step forward in open world design, where Bethesda might apply many of the concepts and strengths seen in their previous games on a new, never before seen scale as befits the space genre. And Bethesda have not done that. The greater scale of space has ended up bringing a number of sacrifices, and when it comes to immersive open world space simulation, there are existing games that do it better.
Okay, beautiful stuff. Okay. A broad scale, I generally agree with this. All fair criticism that looks at things within the fan base, player base, gamer based perspective on Starfield, with the grounded realities about the challenges of creating a new IP for Bethesda. Totally unexplored area. There will be bumps, there will be mistakes. You criticize the places. Hopefully, they take the general mainline criticisms in and fix it, fix it afterwards. There's some criticism for that. I think it tends to be too harsh. No Man's Sky is definitely skyrocketed despite the really poor reception they did. But I think that's as much as I want to cover here, or dive into NeverKnowsBest content to sort of verify. And frankly, it seems like a lot of Pat's theories seems like just that: speculation, theories, cockiness, and to come out with it without showing any evidence, and still his horrible response video. I mean, if it wasn't such a joke, I would go over and debunk it. But if you seriously take that response seriously, retirement, whatever, I don't know what to say for you. Maybe you think that highlights never taken Pat out of context, but it just was established in an overall narrative based on, for example, no, I'm not even going to engage with it. Okay. That feels like a trap video also to respond to. So no, I'm just going to say it's titled as a joke. It comes off as a joke to me. People wants to take it seriously. Fine. I'll give you that perspective. I don't have to accept it. All this is quite a mess. And I got my deep dive into NeverKnowsBest. Yeah. And I have my particular bias, my particular approach to things. What will I do in the future? Definitely need to do the Skyrim review. Not Skyrim. Fuck Skyrim. Okay. That has enough issues. Pat did an okay video about that. A little bit overly long, going into the gimmicky long man criticism style that I think is a little excessive. Not obsessive, excessive. Okay. But that's fair. There's a place for that sort of content, and there's a place for shorter content. There's a place for streams. There's a place for videos. There's a place for everything. But for now, I'm done, and gonna just turn this into a video. Who knows? I'll leave it up until I can edit it down, because there was a few bumps in the way, and I wouldn't feel fair keeping all of Never's content in wholesale given how much I viewed it. But I'll keep it up just for retrospective until I can take it down and edit it. Till next time, bye.